Reporters Board. We are reconvening after having a closed session, and I'll report out that an action was taken. Let's move then to agenda item 6, which is our examination pass rates. Ms. Finner, if you could just start us off with the exam and details thereof.
Sure. So typically the exam pass rates are the exam in general is part of my EO report because of the very low pass rate for the last 3 dictation exams. I felt it was important to pull it out separately and talk about it, make it a little bit easier for the public to pick it up, that this would be a more focused discussion than we normally have. So the statistics that you see are the regular historical graphs of the pass rates, so you can see. So I thought what I would do for the board's benefit and the public's benefit is just go through specifically what happens with the dictation exam, since there aren't currently issues with the 2 written portions, although I'm happy to address any of that if you want me to go there. But since the focus is on the dictation, what we do under the auspices or with the help of OPES, we take actual transcriptions. So we have court and depot transcripts, and per board policy, we make sure there is an interruption every page because we're a 4-voice test. There must be some type of interruption every page so that you get the interchange with the 4 people talking. Mm-hmm. At that point, there's a syllabic density that comes into play, and that's the way of making sure it's not too easy, not too hard. So per board policy, the syllabic density is 1.3 to 1.5. That means you can't have too many short words like Al is a pal, we went to the store, because that would be too, it would sound fast when you're going down because the words are too short. Mm-hmm. And you can't have too many supercalifragilisticexpialidocious words because, again, it would be too dense syllabically. And so that's how we keep the test as standard as we can. It varies between those, but it's very close on. So we have a panel of working court reporters who have been through the training, and so they will do their initial offer of a test. That comes to the office, and then we blindly give that to another subject matter expert, another working court reporter who's been through the training. And then they will go back through, recount it, make sure it's counted out right. They might see of an area that it sounds funny, they might rephrase. They do edit it as they go. But once that comes back from that second review, we consider it ready for pre-test. Once we have 3 proposed tests that are ready for pre-test, we convene a group of newly licensed CSRs. So that is anywhere from 3 to 6 new CSRs, and we read those tests to them. Those CSRs tell us things like, the name is weird, you need to change the name. Or there was a term that came up that was really hard to hear, you need to put it on the glossary. When it went to the other witness, it felt like it really speeded up. Maybe you need to count that again. We know that the count is on, but it might mean we need to take a look at what the content is and make sure if it's really complicated grammar, then it becomes very complicated to follow. And it's not our intent to make it complicated to follow, so we want to make sure that it's pretty straightforward. What we do in those cases a lot of times are break it down into 2 questions instead of one really long question that becomes convoluted. We might break it down into 2 shorter questions that are more straightforward. So after we get the feedback from the newly licensed CSRs, then we finalize the test with their feedback. And so then that's when it becomes eligible to be in the test bank for the candidates.
So a quite rigorous process with a lot of eyes.
A lot of eyes.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
How long has the 1.3 to 1.5 syllabic density been in effect?
Oh, maybe the board policy.
It might be in the policies
Yeah,
in there. A long
Maybe
time.
even an estimation, as long as it's not a guess.
It would be a guess. I would have to look it up, as long as I've been around.
Okay, so, all right, a long time.
I think that's a slam. I'm just kidding. No, yes, it has been a long time,
Okay,
sorry.
like decades.
Yes.
Decades, okay,
90s,
90s. That's what I need to know.
yeah.
So on our dictation exam numbers, I mean, we go back as far as July 2008, and it's been that way at least since then. for
It goes
sure.
back to 89, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Has there been, one of my questions, we see in November 2016, January 2017, March 2017, a huge change in numbers, a drop off. Has the test changed in any way?
So in November, as the board knows, in November, we did rearrange the speaker order. And that was inadvertent because we didn't realize there was board policy. So that threw the candidates off completely. And so I think that is the explanation for the November exam. For the ones
Right.
coming back, I don't really know what to say. I mean, the following ones from that, because the test is developed the same way. I will note that during this period, we have had a couple of school closures. And so candidates that do come, if they're not successful on their first time, I'm not sure where they go back to practice. I'm not sure where they're getting any support from. As the licensees know, but the non-licensees may not realize, the skills portion is a very physical activity. And it's much like, I equate it to running a race. So if you're a runner, if you don't practice, you can't keep your speed. You can't keep your ability to be competitive. You can't say, oh, there's a marathon in 2 weeks, I think I'm just gonna sign up for it and go and expect to perform well. And the standards that we hold for this license exam are very high. So you can't be less than the very top of your game and expect to come in and pass the test. It's not, once you pass a test, you can pass all tests. You need to make a concerted effort to keep that skill up in order to be fast enough to pass it.
So I point well made that November and January are probably numbers that are skewed because of different circumstances, but March 2017, what explains those numbers is something I guess we can all discuss.
I was gonna say, I get asked the question by the legislature because they wanna know, I mean, what's going on? It looks like something happened.
Right.
And it's difficult because words are words. So it's not that the test is harder. It's not read any faster than 200. It's not read any slower than 180. We tape it so we can assure that that's the case. As I said, the syllabic density is set so it doesn't get too easy or too hard. Why one test is good for one reporter or one candidate, I don't know how to answer that question. I guess you see people compete in the Olympics and all they've done for their entire life is skate. And they walk out on the ice and they fall. So things happen. There is a physical component to that. I don't have an explanation. I do think that the school closures are an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the schools themselves don't know
What's
what
happening.
their candidates are doing. If they don't pass that initial test, what they're doing to prepare to be successful at a follow-up test.
Okay. Any
I
comments?
just-
Yes.
Yeah, just two comments, and as it relates to the November retest, and I know this is kind of a little off topic, but I want to make a comment about it, because we were put in a position at a special meeting in December of last year to consider a retest, and I say this just for purposes of like in the cyber world, my comment exists that I am disappointed in the passage rate when we, I think, did something unprecedented and offered a retest. And I remember so vividly public testimony, students saying, just give us another shot, it was unfair. And I think that is what swayed at least 3 members of this board to proceed forward. And I just want to publicly say I'm disappointed in primarily the people that probably came and testified. I'm sure more than 7 people came and testified to give them another shot, and only 7 people passed. And so I'm incredibly disappointed. I don't know who to lodge that concern with, but I want to thank the staff because I know how hard it was for you guys to just do a 180 and administer the exam on such short notice. So thank you. And again, I'm incredibly disappointed that that was the outcome. And secondly, I think the next question that I'd love to see, just on the statistics of who passed and who failed, is under what category qualified them to take the exam. You know, if they were a part of what school, what type of school, were they coming from an out-of-state, you know, all of those things. And that may allow some data so that we could say, oh my gosh, if everybody, I'm just hypothetically, if everybody is failing from a private school, there's an issue there, and we have to figure out how we address that.
Or
So I'd
coming in
love to
just as
see
an
that breakdown.
RPR,
Yeah.
as opposed to qualifier.
We have those statistics, so we can get those to.
That'd be
That'd be super
helpful to see.
interesting. It's good.
Yeah, that's great. Any other comments from the
Well,
board?
I have to agree that the results of the retest were disappointing, but I'm not sure that I expected a high pass rate. I
Expected
felt
more
that
than
the,
7.
well, yeah, more than that. But I think the students were expecting an easy exam. I don't know why they would think that, because we certainly never, ever said that that would be the case. We never, in comments that we made back, we were pretty clear that the exam was going to be at the same level, that the retest was going to be at the same level as the test that was in November. So I don't know whether they lowered their own standards. They just thought it was going to be easier, and so they didn't practice as much. There were holidays in there, or whatever the distractions were.
It was actually one of the issues that we did talk about, that there was
Well-
a holiday and there were a lot of things happening between that time frame of November and March.
But I think we had to give the students the opportunity to show us that, in fact, they were, you know, that they were still able to take this test, and that the issue wasn't really the seating arrangement.
Well, the opportunity
know-
was given, and we have the results of it. And so now,
Can I say one
Sure.
thing on these? I think, as I mentioned before, I do go onto Facebook a lot just to read. And it's almost like,
is it dangerous?
yeah, in other words, you know, I see at conventions and stuff that, you know, usually there's a seminar about Facebook and what you should and should not be doing on Facebook. And every time I go onto Facebook, I usually see Exhibit A of what you should not be saying on Facebook. And one of the things that there was a lot of comments about that November test, about the rearranging of speakers, et cetera. But what just, I'm trying to think of, I would,
Floored you?
floors me, appalls me, I was incredulous, is the attitude of entitlement. That this, the retest, number one, that they should have a retest, but number two, when they found out that they were going to have a retest, that it just should be easier. And, you know, at first I thought they were being facetious. But then when I was reading more and more comments, it was that sense of entitlement. And it made me, I never saw anything in there about, oh yes, this is my great second chance. I'm really practicing. I've really put aside the time. I'm working on my notes, making sure that I'm transcribing and comparing to what my notes are. You know, I get the second, this chance to really put it all together. And I think, and I get it. When I was, at that point in my life, I didn't understand what the Court Reporters Board truly was, other than they gave this test, and sometimes I thought maybe they were trying to keep us out of the profession in the sense of, the nerves I felt about the test. But I never really thought of them as an evil entity. But I think what they forget.
Is that what you read?
Yeah, but it was, I mean, the words evil entity didn't actually appear on Facebook, but it was sort of that tone, and I chalk it up to truly not understanding what the Court Reporters Board is here for, especially the fact that the Court Reporters Board here is for the protection of the consumer. And if you can't, I have worked on these workshops for creating the test, and if somebody cannot pass that basic test, which is a very basic test, I wouldn't want them working in court in one of my courtrooms. I mean, it's that easy of a test. I agree, I think it's more the nerves. But if they need to be able to pass that test, and I just don't know if it's sort of a generation coming along that has that sense of entitlement, because of course everybody got a ribbon when they ran the race, whether they came in first or second or last place. And I don't know how that has come into play into these kind of things now.
As someone who took the bar, I mean, the same thing is there as far as folks saying that it's too hard, it's too difficult, there's low passage rates. It is a difficult test. And there are a lot of issues. I mean, there are others here on the board that can talk about that test and how painful, and some people taking it multiple times, just like court reporters. But to lower the standard just to get more people out can be more harm than good. And in the end, this is about consumer protection.
I agree.
And it's not about lowering the standards to get more people out, but making sure that we get them to the right standards.
And I just rack my brain and think over and over and over, what can be done to change all this, to get the understanding that this is what they need to do. We knew that the moment I got the news that we didn't pass that test, which I did not pass the first time, I was back at school, I was taking those practice tests, I was transcribing those practice tests, and I wasn't out of the norm. That's what everybody was doing. And I know things have changed from the 1970s till now, but I just don't know. I don't know what it would take to make that shift, and to get that mindset changed, to get people in there and get that test, because it's a shame. It's a wonderful profession. It's a shame that test is holding them up from getting into our profession. But it is not, people pass it. It is not a, quote, hard test compared to, I know for Rosalie and me, and some of the stuff that we have had to report in our career it's a, CSR test is such an easy test compared to reality at times. So, but I don't have a solution or an answer. Of course, if I had the magic solution, I'd be out giving seminars and making lots of money. So,
Well, I think it's really interesting that our process in creating this test hasn't really changed.
yeah.
But the numbers have dropped off. So if it's not the test, then where else do we go to find a solution? The board has received comments from folks, and I would love to hear folks here if they have any public comments they'd like to give. Do we have a list? And
I did not create a sign-in list for comment.
okay, so I saw a lot of hands go up, and if you first come, first serve, anybody, everyone will have an opportunity to speak. So if someone would like to come up and start, it would be great. We can start, in fact, the first row and work our way back. How about that? Is that good? Okay.
Sheila, are we allowed to do like time limits?
You are,
If the president wants to, it just has to be uniform.
You know what, time limits are hard for me because I think that this is a very emotional subject and people have a lot that they'd like to say about the topic. And so, I mean, generally 3 minutes of public comment, I know, but I think in this case, I'll let folks speak. And if we're going really far into it, then I may say, okay, thank you for your comment, and we'll move to another, okay?
Or if it's already been said.
Yeah, and folks, when they come up, if it's already been said, you don't have to go into your dissertation about it as well. You can just say, I'd like to echo the comments that have been made before me, and we'll have you on the record. So, please.
So just to remind you, my name is Jennifer Esquivel, and I'm the District D representative for CCRA. I just wanted to briefly comment on the topic because 2 weeks ago, CCRA held their regular mock CSR at Cypress College. It's an event that CCRA puts on a couple times a year to encourage students to come and simulate the testing process on their own with our help and the aid of teachers at a court reporting school or program. 2 weeks ago, we had a significant turnout, half of which are students or applicants who attended are expected to take the exam tomorrow, which I was pleased to hear, and commended their effort on coming out and participating early on a Saturday morning all the way in Orange County, when some of them, we had people come from Fresno and Bakersfield to participate. But I did want to mention that during that event, we did find some time to talk about the upcoming exam, which is going to be held tomorrow. And on a personal and professional note, I did share with them a couple things, and I just wanted to relay those to you as well. The first of which is that I wanted to remind them that they cannot control the exam. When you are a working reporter, you do not get to control necessarily where people sit, how they speak, whether or not they speak over one another, the words they use. I wish as a deposition reporter I could raise my hand and say, please stop saying that medical term, I hate writing it. But it doesn't work that way, and I would probably have a much less stressful life if it did. That's one thing that I did impart to them, is that they need to give up the control factor, which of course goes against everything we learn as a court reporting student, because we are all type A personalities and eager to control everything. But that's one thing I did impress upon them. The other thing is that they need to welcome the challenges. When I was a student at Sage College, we had an instructor by the name of Balin. Balin, I hope you're watching this. We called her the Balin Wall, because if you could conquer Balin, you could write anything. And a lot of students didn't want to go to class and hear her read because she was so difficult. But I accepted the challenge and even went to her 225 class to prepare for the exam. So I encourage them to welcome those challenges as well, because you will never know what you walk into as a working reporter, freelance, court, or otherwise, cart and captioner. And it's important that you have an attitude of welcoming the challenge and living up to it so that you deliver the optimal work product that your client or your student or the court is expecting. So I just wanted to share that information with you on behalf of CCRA. That is one thing that we are doing to try to support the students. Our Support Our Students Committee has chaired that event, and we will be having it again at our convention in the fall, and hopefully students will attend. And obviously, while we can't simulate the nerve aspect necessarily, we were able to use it as a forum to encourage them and provide support for them.
Thank you. Any other testimony? Sure, please come forward.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Jesse Picklesheimer. I'm a deposition reporter. I'm also the program coordinator at Tri Community Adult Education. And I just wanted to address the low pass rates. I love what Ms. Fenner said about the runner and what a physical test this is. I don't take anything away from that. However, on top of that, it's such a mental thing to take this test. You know, it's almost like the stars have to be just aligned perfectly. Students really suffer from a lot of nerves. What's the solution for that? I also don't have that solution either. But as far as lowering the bar, I absolutely don't agree with that at all. The bar is set really high, and it needs to be that high. I'm a very proud reporter, very proud of my work product. I am someone, I'm just going to put it out there, I had to take the CSR numerous times, and it was always because of the nerves. And I always tell my students that I have under me now, you have taken all the tests that you need to go and take the CSR. You have the skill, but something just happens at that darn CSR. People just lose their mind, and it's all nerves. So I was in that situation, came back several times, and then the one that I finally did pass, I only missed 16 on the one that I did pass. So what's the reason for that? I'll never know, and that's, I was the one there going through the process. So I don't know what the solution is, but definitely I just wanted to say, please don't lower the bar. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the first row? Welcome.
Well, good afternoon now.
Yeah.
Jocelyn Epperson, and I represent Downey Court Reporting. I just wanted to mention the fact that I don't know if anyone's ever looked into what kind of errors the students are making so that we as schools have a consensus for what the students are doing. So are they missing punctuation? Are they dropping? Are they, do we have gaps? Is it, sign changes? What are the errors is there a common denominator so that the schools can kind of figure out what is it that the students are doing wrong, so that we can kind of know what do we need to focus on as administrators in schools. Also, I almost lost my train of thought. Also, I was going to say that I would agree with everything that Jesse said about nerves, people being nervous, and sometimes some of the negativity that comes from the tests, it, unfortunately plays with the next test. So once you hear someone say that was an awful test, and then you hear it splattered all over Facebook and all the social medias, then they come with this expectation that it's going to be horrible, bad, and they're going to have this awful experience. So that then plays a big part in how they perform as well. And then the last thing I was going to mention is I know the schools have a very big problem with students returning to school. So if they take the test the first time, they don't come back to school. So then they come back to this test. I was telling Yvonne that, we have people, we may have 20 students that are on our stats, and we've only seen 4 or 5 of them back in school. So where are the other, 15, 16 students that are showing up for this test? So that then makes it difficult for us or they come back to school 3 or 4 weeks before the test is going to, is going to happen, and then we have to figure out how do we get the student prepared to take this important test. Granted, it is on accountability for the student, but we also feel liable and responsible because we want them to go, they're representing our school, we want them to go and pass as well, but it makes it very, very difficult. So there's a lot of things. I know, I wish we could I know, students are required to pass a qualifier. Maybe that needs to change. Maybe the standard needs to change at school. I mean, I know students aren't they're probably throwing stones at me in a minute, but, maybe we need to make it so that we have some support from the board on what we can do to make that standard higher in school so that when they get to the test, they're more prepared to take it and not feel like they're failing before they even get there. So that's just my take. All right.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
Yeah, there was a question put forth about, yeah.
Yeah, I just, thank you for that question, Jocelyn. I can tell you from the feedback from the graders, we do have the occasional person that can't punctuate anything, and so they do fail because of punctuation. It's very occasional. Usually the typical test will have, a comma missed here, a dash missed there, but it's a small percentage, very small percentage. We find a lot of times, and the graders are like, it's funny because they're cheering for their candidate. It's like, oh gosh, we're all 6 pages into it and they've had hardly any errors. And you can tell they got excited because there's this massive drop and they never can recover from that. So we know it's nerves on that person. I think that every candidate would pretty much have to take their own test and take a look at it. I don't think that we can say overall there's a trend. We would say that they just have the wrong words or little small drops enough to make it through, which tells us if it's steadily through the whole transcript, it's speed. They don't have the speed to stay current and stay on top of it. But there's not an overall trend, so it's really important for the candidate that's interested in getting better to get their test and look at it.
Thank you. So on the second, thank you. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful.
My name is Cheryl Hobb. I am president-elect of the Deposition Reporters Association.
Monine Black, president of DRA.
Thank you for having us, first of all, and I'm really pleased to see that this was on your agenda today. I know this is a subject that has been raised more and more in recent years. I think something that hasn't necessarily been addressed is a growing trend in the lowering of this passage rate. Monine and I did a little bit of cursory investigation using ourselves as an example. Monine was licensed in July of 1994. Her CSR number is 10574. I was licensed in December of 2010, and my number is 13600. So for those of you who don't do math in your head on the spot, that's a 3,026 numbers, an average of 189 a year, and that's in the period of 16 years. Conversely, from the time that I was licensed until today, you have a difference in 594 CSR numbers, which equals just over 91 a year. So, and if you look back further, I went back further 2 years prior to Monine's licensing, 1992, and you had an average of 400 passes a year from 92 to 94. Now we're averaging about 91. So one of the questions that I've had that has been kind of rumbling around in my head is how much of a diagnostic we have done on these numbers, and is there a trend that's related to the test or are other factors involved? I think it's quite presumptuous of all of us to sit here and think that we can solve this problem just from a short chat in an afternoon here in Ontario. I think that this is a disease of sorts and it does need a diagnostic. At DRA, we've had a lot of conversations about this. As you can imagine, as an association, we feel like we're at a loss because I'm continually fending off requests to solve this problem. Like I sit on the magic cure-all solution. It's in my fingertips and I'm withholding it. I want students to succeed. The DUCA report recently released shows that there will be 5,500 new job openings starting next year, 2018. That's a big issue. And our biggest concern at DRA is the fact that if we don't start staffing some of these jobs, ER will staff it for us. And that affects all of us, whether we're in the courtroom, whether we're cart captioners, whether we're deposition reporters. We need to do something about this. It's a bleed and it needs to be addressed. I wish I had the solution, but I don't. And what I would love to see, with your blessing, or maybe even without your blessing, we would love to put together a Warren Commission of sorts, and maybe that's a bit of an antiquated term, but in 1963, when JFK was assassinated, we had more questions than answers. Chief Justice Earl Warren put together a commission to solve the murder. And I think right now what's happening is murder. We need to figure out what's going on. And it's not nerves, it's not schools closing, it's not social media, it's all of these things and more. But dealing with students' nerves, that's a problem we're never going to solve. So what I would love to see, and what I propose, at least that DRA can contribute to this conversation, is we would like to put together our own Warren Commission to create a laundry list of addressable issues to solve this problem. I can't come here to you and promise that we're going to get anything done, but I would love for us to put together a list of concrete things that can be changed or can even be entertained, because something has to give here. I know you made mention of the bar, which is arguably one of the most difficult tests one can take in law or in any profession. And I took a look at a couple numbers. I'm a numbers girl. I wanted to go into physics, but I couldn't afford to go to school. So in July of 2016, the bar passage rate was 43% in California. In February 2017, it was 34.5%. Conversely, we've had pass rates of 7.1%, 6.4%, and 4.1%. These bar numbers at 30 and 40% were deemed as abysmal by many legal scholars. We're looking at single-digit numbers. Something has to give here. So I think this being a performance-based test, as Yvonne discussed, it's almost like being an Olympic athlete. You can study your whole life and still have a failure here. But this is an entry-level test, and there's something going on here that needs to be addressed. And I think it's more urgent an issue than any of us realize. So my offer to you is that we as an association would like to take the opportunity to gather nonpartisanly across association lines, whether it be teachers, other association members, board members, students, a think tank, to at least get to the bottom of some of the more pressing reasons that this is happening.
And just to be clear for everyone, the single digits didn't occur until November 2016, so it's not a trend. And also, to your percentages, I wonder if fewer candidates are coming forward, and that's what changes those numbers. You want to jump in?
Yes.
Yes.
So the difference between when Mo and I took the test to when they're taking the test now, we literally only have 300 candidates the entire year. So it's a much smaller candidate pool. And so that does skew things statistically. So for instance, when we have a single digits pass rate and it's 7%, if somebody goes through the appeal process and we get one more pass, it jumps up to like 17% because the numbers are so small. So you have to be a little bit careful with small numbers and percentages statistically. Not to take away from any of your larger points, but I know that you're a numbers person, and so I want to just make sure that your underlying assumptions match the hypothesis that you're presenting.
And I definitely appreciate and agree with that. But I think that also leads me to the other side of this coin is the issue that we are not getting people into this profession. That's a discussion for a different day, but that is something that would have to come into this discussion, because the mere fact that when you and Mo took the test that we had maybe 1,000, 2,000 candidates a year versus the 300, 400, 500 we see, that's a whole other issue, and that is, I think, one of the things that will emerge from this kind of investigation is that we are not doing nearly a good enough job of bringing people in so they even get the opportunity to take the test. But that is a point well taken. I do appreciate that. You're right. You can go from a single-digit pass rate to a double-digit pass rate with merely one person. So that is something to be noted. But still, the percentages do reflect a greater problem that I would love to see all of us address as we're all on the same team. And I think you're right when you say that the students have a tendency to look at you folks as the term evil entity, which is terribly unfair. I respect all of you immensely, but we need to create a better sense of community. Just anecdotally, I know I can talk forever, so I'll stop shortly, but when I took the test, I was terrified, as I think most of us were. But I'll truly tell you what made me feel so much better was I was given a paper, I think the day before when you did the registration and set up your printer, and it had a bevy of instructions on it. But the last line said, "Try to relax, we want you to pass." And there was a smiley face. And it was the first time it had ever occurred to me that you folks wanted me in the profession. And that is something I cannot emphasize enough to students, that this is the fairest test they will ever take. So I would love to, on behalf of DRA, assist you folks in coming to a resolution where you guys can stop being the bad guy and we can get more people and more bodies in the seats.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I speak to something?
Absolutely.
Just as a person who's been doing this forever. I passed in '81. I've been doing this for many years. As many of you know, I'm a huge advocate for all court reporters, and I want everyone to succeed. And when I do my own Rosalie Commission, I look at the last couple of years, and some of the things that have changed that I've seen, like Tony, is it makes me really sad when I will read in Facebook people blaming the board or blaming this or blaming that and being angry and being mad and why are we even trying. And I would hope and suggest that when you see that, maybe comment you were wrong instead of letting it go. because it really is unfair to all of us, because the more that negativity, it breeds more negativity and causes more nerves. So I think if some of us would just stand up and say, hey, you know what, you're so wrong, because this is the best profession ever, and maybe if you do this or that. And it is like being an athlete. It's so much like being a professional player. If you stop running or if you stop playing tennis and you expect to go to Wimbledon and win, you're not going to. And it is the brain and the nerves, you know, that's always been there, and you can learn to control that. So my 2 suggestions would be stay in school. If you don't pass, you better bloody well go back to school, and you better take it seriously because you're an athlete. And number 2, knock it off with negativity in Facebook, and if you see it, make it stop.
Duly noted, and will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, please, come forward. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
My name is Yolanda Krieger. I'm the court reporting director at South Coast College. We are one of the private schools left. So enrolling students is a issue for us right now. Not only are we dealing with accreditation, going through that, the Bureau, DOE, NCRA, the board. There's a lot going on, and then trying to enroll students. And when they see the statistics, 1.5 for students, I mean, it's really, you know, to get students, it's really, really hard. We got 2 starts, 2 in the day, 4 at night. This last start, we start every 6 weeks. Sometimes we don't get any.
What's
So
the highest you've ever had, by the way?
of a start?
Yeah.
We did have one somewhat recently. We had, I think there were 13 in that one.
Okay,
For a
sure.
day.
Okay.
For the day, yeah. That's a big group.
That's
a big one.
Okay.
So, and then to keep them is another thing. So, if South Coast goes away, the profession is, I mean, it's going to be pretty bad if we're gone. So, and I'm not saying lower the standards for the test. We're working our students to the bone. We're pushing them. I would say about 85% come back. There's that 15 to 20% that does not come back, and yeah, there's not much of a chance for them to pass. But those ones that have, they come back. They're working hard. They didn't pass the January. Some of them didn't pass the January. We got 2 in January that passed. We got 1 that passed the last test. So we've had 3 in the last test since November, January, and March. We had 3 pass. In July last year, I believe we had 11 pass. So that's tough. So, but for enrollment, we really need to bring in students. It's been tough. We do everything we can. We go to high schools. We go to events in Orange County, and we really try to do what we can. So, but we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there, but it's tough. It's really tough. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yvonne, as a board, we can't go out and help them recruit, correct?
Well, if we had workplace issues, I mean, it is consumer protection to ensure the health of the workforce. So it would be good to have good enrollment. You couldn't recruit for South Coast, but you could recruit for the industry, if you understand the distinction.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Ms. Bruni.
So for the licensees, both attorneys and court reporters, at what age did you know that you wanted to be in your profession?
Oh, that's hard. People's Court started me.
Okay, 5 years old.
I was quite young.
I think it has to start before high school, to be honest with you, for people to know about this profession and to be working, because it's often been likened to needing to have an English degree. And from what I've heard from schools is that the people who are interested or taking the entrance exams aren't passing and don't qualify to even become students. So I think you have to start a lot earlier than even high school or recruiting, people coming out. I don't know what else to say, and then maybe there's just not enough qualified people to be going to the schools.
I know
Sorry.
with my daughter, they have a career day, and they have folks from different careers come. She's in middle school, and maybe that's an opportunity for the associations to group with the schools and go out and talk about what they do. I actually made my own testimony to my sister to say, hey, have you ever thought about court reporting and look at all the options, especially with the California numbers about how many jobs there are available. So starting early, I think, is a great idea, and doing it in a forum that's more show and tell. This is what we do. And because I have to tell you, as an attorney, who knew all of the things that court reporters do and prepare for, and being on this board has really opened my eyes. And that was late in life, but starting early would be a great thing. Any other comments to that? No? So I see someone leaning on the first row to speak.
Thank you. My name is
Welcome.
Brooke Ryan. I'm the president of the California Court Reporters Association, and I just wanted to let you know that we have been going to county-wide middle school career fairs. So this is our third year. They're, I think, $1,800 a piece. We go to 3 to 6 a year. We're trying to go for more, obviously. So we cannot tell you statistically where we're at with those for a couple more years. But that's exactly, Paula, Ms. Bruning, the conversation we had a couple years ago was that we thought we needed to get to them at middle school. So we have been doing that. Like I said, this is our third year, and all up and down the state. And we have, we contact the local court reporting schools, and they'll send a student, and we'll send a board member or a local court reporter. Please always remember LACRA and all the other local associations will help as well. So on that front, career fairs, we're trying to do that angle for sure, going to a younger age. But we also have a new PR angle we're going to talk about that'll come out soon, and it's what we're seeing is a lot of people have family members. It's a sister. A lot of moms and daughters are in this profession, so we're going to start going after that angle. I was just at my mom's retirement in little old Galt, California, and a lady came up to me. Her daughter was really interested in court reporting. Her aunt is a court reporter, so there's really familial ties there that we need to start focusing on. That's what we're doing on behalf of CCRA.
Thank you very much.
And I would say another pool, I've got 4 people that are in different colleges that graduate from college with an English degree or a political science degree and don't know what to do with it. And so their parents are typically a lawyer, will contact me and go, do you think court reporting would be good? It's fantastic. So that's another pool of people that graduate from college and really don't know what they really want to be. And this is the most fantastic opportunity. So it's just another avenue for DRA, CCRA to go after people.
Yeah. Okay, so more public comments on the second row? No? Third row, going back? Any more public comments? Sure. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm wonderful.
My name is David Strix. And before I start, I wanted to tell you, I came here at 9 o'clock in the morning, and this was the reason I was here. Paula was nice enough to come over and to tell me that I don't need to be here until 1 o'clock. And I decided, I could go and do my work somewhere else, but I said I'm going to stay here and see what goes on. And I want you to know that I must say that I'm very impressed with the concern and the effort that the board puts into this this court reporting board. It's very impressive. It's, as a member of the public, it's gratifying to see that there are people like you that are looking out for us and taking care of us, and I appreciate it and thank you. But the reason why I'm here, I'm an attorney, and my daughter has taken the test the last 3 times. So she'd be here to speak, but she's busy studying for the test tomorrow and didn't want to take off the time. But as Rosalie mentioned, my daughter has a bachelor's degree in liberal studies, and when she was looking to find out what type of profession is out there for her to make a decent living, I mentioned to her, being an attorney, that a court reporter is a really good profession. And she decided, it's a good idea. Just like many of you decided it's a good profession, she did too. And she's a good student. She went to Bryan, and she's very capable. And her friends seem to be very competent students, also very studious. And then they get hit with this 7%, 6%, 4%. As I mentioned, I'm an attorney, and I was going to speak about the numbers, but I think Deborah already did, so we're not going to, Deborah, right? Cheryl, sorry, close. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I apologize, close. But, when we see these type of numbers, we have to be introspective. It's not just to sit there and say, it's the students have, the social media, the students look at us as the evil people. all of us, the students also need to be introspective, and I think the board needs to be introspective and find out what's going on here. You know, to have a 30% passage rate, I think that's okay. People understand not everybody is going to pass a test. There's a high level of competency that's necessary. And, you know, 1 out of 3 people pass, I think that's maybe acceptable. I'm sure the students would like it to be higher, but to have 6 out of 147, I mean, there's 2 aspects to that. One is the fairness aspect. Someone is studying and putting in all this time and effort and money and paying for the exam and taking off of work because they got to live too, I assume. Not everybody is like my daughter that lives at home, but most people have to work. So there's this fairness aspect. What are we doing to these people? What are we doing to these 147 people that are out there studying, spending weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they get nothing out of it? Well, those 6, you know, congratulations to them, and I'm really happy for them, you know. So there's a fairness aspect. And then, you know, I don't know if it's something that the board should look at, but there's the humanity aspect also. It's quite depressing for someone to go to school, spend years studying, and then get hit with a 7% pass, and then do it again, and a 6%, and do it again, a 4%. My gosh, you gotta really feel for these people. They're depressed. They don't know what to do. Should we go be a speech pathologist? You know, what do you do now? And spend another 3-4 years? It's a big problem, and like Cheryl said, we're not gonna find the issues right, you know, determine how to solve all these issues right now, but we can't let it just slide and say, okay, let's move on to the next test. We have to do something.
Well, may I speak to that a little bit?
Sure.
I mean, the only things that can come to my mind, and like I said, I'm an advocate. I want everyone to succeed. I'm so proud of every court reporter and every student who goes through, and I'll say the word hell because I went through it too, and I knew when I got into school only 10% were going to make it. And so as I told you earlier, I told all my friends I can't have any more friends for a while. And I was serious because I really want to become a court reporter, and I put my life on hold to go to school, and not that I know everything. But I also suggest that, and I talked about the negativity before, and I'm sorry, people do get depressed. I cried when I was at 160 to 180 every week because I didn't get out of that class for 6 months. I also knew, though, it takes a certain kind of weird personality to be able to do this and close your brain. And I knew that 10% make it. And I just would suggest that rather than being depressed, get mad. And I'm not like to whoever, get mad and say, you know what, no way, I'm going to do it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. And it's easier maybe said than done when you're going through it. And believe me, I did my share of crying. And then to find people that have a like-minded, like I want Sherry to win, I want her to pass. And to hang with those kind of people, there's a real danger to hanging or talking or listening to negativity. I think it's in any profession or anything you do, any skill set. But if you hang with people with like energy and like excitement, and believe me, I'm an advocate for all of these students, it really does help get over that hurdle. Some of it is the fear or the nerves. Some of it is, like I said, getting angry and just using that as power and energy. But just to know you can do it and to do it, maybe it's easier said than done, but I think that needs to be part of the mindset of the people going into court reporting school and to taking that bloody test. So I like fairness, but this is something more than fairness. This is something that everybody needs to advocate for themselves and just really want it, and you just do it, and you don't care what anybody says or thinks you're going to do it. And that's the attitude I believe you need to have to become a court reporter.
Right, so I agree with you that the negativity, there's no place for that. And even in a 50% pass rate, you're going to have negativity. You're going to have people who are upset who didn't pass. But a 7, 6, and 4% passage rate is just not acceptable in society. We have to be introspective and find out what the problem is. I agree with you.
I appreciate that.
Okay, and that's my statement.
I hear
Okay.
you, and
Okay.
I want her to see something to think.
I'm gonna
Think and think and think.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And
Thank you.
again, I'm very impressed with the effort that you guys put in. It's very nice and it's impressive, and keep up the good work. You should be strong to be able to continue.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, I didn't see that. Wait a minute. Okay.
All right.
I just want to say, what a great dad for sitting here all day.
That's what I'm right there. I'll say, this is for all the dads and moms, you know?
So I see a comment back on the first row. Sure. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
So again, I'm Anna Costa, retired reporter, and I train co-reporters and educate the legal community. It's great to have a lawyer here. So part of the training that I offer, a major part of it is the internships, where the co-reporting students are the reporter of record at mock depositions and mock trials. And there is no better experience for them than to sit in the room and the transcript is on them. And knowing how to interrupt and when to interrupt and all of that. And marking exhibits, all practical skills, experiences. And in talking to them, and I also just published a survey. I got 150 responses with a lot of data. So, Cheryl, I have stuff to share with you. The biggest thing that jumps out in their responses, and it's all over the board, is the lack of support. They need support from even before they enroll in school to really understand what it takes to do this job, to have support all the way through, to understand that they're going to fail more than they're going to pass. What other school do you have that experience? You learn this strange-looking machine, you learn a new language, and then now you're focused on speed, and you're creating this, with letters that don't make any sense to the normal public, and then it's all about speed and getting more words per minute, inch by inch by inch, and you're going to fail before you succeed. And when you do succeed, then you start at the bottom again. So it's kind of like graduating from elementary school, where by the time you're out of there, you're the big fish in a small pond, and then you go to middle school, and now you're the little fish in a big pond, and then you go to high school and you start all over again. It kind of feels like that. And I don't have all of the answers, but this is one thing that I know from my experience as a certified coach. All human beings are motivated by feelings and needs. So if they're feeling stressed out or depressed, actually depression is like anger turned inward. If you do not acknowledge the truth of what you feel and the underlying need, so they have a need for success, they have a need for progress, they have a need for support, and if they don't get those needs met, then all of these emotions come up. Worry, anger, sadness, fear. There's all of that comes up, and they're just manifestations, and they react rather than stating what they need. And I think whatever is done, whatever decisions are made to help students get through the program and to be successful out there, they need clarity about what is expected of them. They need support every step of the way, a helping hand by people who know, emotional support, moral support, and physically demonstrating to them what is needed, telling them what they need to know every step of the way.
I think to your comments, that's where schools are really important for the students. And this board, as a regulatory agency, it's difficult to give that
Exactly.
necessary support, and where the associations and the schools will really need to step in and help.
Right, and individual reporters.
And individual reporters as mentors.
As
Sure
mentors. True. And both associations here have mentor programs, I know. I just wanted to share that with you. That is one of the main comments that have come out of this is they need more support and understanding and clarity.
Thank you.
Sure.
Quick question. You know, when, and my only frame of reference on a professional licensing exam is the bar exam. So I know recently the state bar went through a revamp of the bar exam where it's went from 3 days to 2 days. And I know those who suffered through the 3-day grueling process are a little bit bitter that it's now 2 days. But nonetheless, there was a lot of work and I think data and research that went into lowering it, or I don't want to say lowering it, changing it from 3 days to 2 days. And so I don't know what process they went through, and I'm not suggesting, and I want to say first and foremost, I have no interest of this board, this is me speaking personally, of lowering the standards, right? And I think we heard a lot of that in the public comment. But I think that to the father's comment, I'm just going to call you dad, but to dad's comment back there, I think it is important that we become introspective as well. And, you know, the DRA incoming president said, is there an opportunity for all of us to get together and, you know, bring a task force together or some type of a group that can look at that? Because I think everyone here has a seat at the table and has an element of responsibility here. So I don't know, I know I'm going way down the road here, but that's something that I'd be interested in looking at as a board.
I think your suggestion to find out just more data, what's happening is a good first start. So that if we do come to the table with the task force, we actually have actual data and information we can work with, and to ensure that it's not just an anomaly, but that there really is some facts or stats that we can look at that's happening and evolving over the years. Are there any other public comments in the room? Sure.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make one more comment in regards to the bringing and recruiting students in. I've made mention of this at recent CCRA board meetings, and I wanted to share it with you as well. I know that marketing for this profession is very difficult. There's not a lot of publicity around court reporting. We kind of get our 15 seconds of fame every once in a while when a commentator calls out a reporter who's been pointed out by a basketball player or something to that effect. But otherwise, we're just in the corner quietly taking down the proceedings. But one thing that does concern me is when I see marketing or commercials that basically say you can earn 6 figures without a college degree. I feel like that is misleading, in the sense that if I were a 12th grader about to graduate and I didn't want to go to college, I may think, well, I just signed up for court reporting school and in a couple of years I'm going to be making $200,000. That's far from the case. And I would be not doing my duty as someone who's involved in the trade association and someone who is a working reporter if I didn't share that with students, that this is a very challenging profession, and like people have mentioned, it's something that should not be made easier in terms of the examination. But I think that that's something that's important to keep in mind when you're marketing and publicizing the profession as a whole, that yes, you have an opportunity to make a very good income, but that should not be diminishing the fact that it's a very difficult job. And even if you don't have a traditional associate's or bachelor's, that doesn't mean that you're going to fly through the schooling and be able to perform the job and command the money that is required with that skill. You can't make a lot of money if you're not doing a very good job in this profession. So I think it's important that that be noted, regardless of where we go with this conversation about recruiting more with the schools and with the associations and even with the CRB, should there be a shortfall in the profession. I think it's something that we should keep in mind when we're recruiting, enrolling students, encouraging them, supporting them, whatever the case may be.
Thank you. So it sounds like I hear from the board that we really need to maybe gather more data, more statistics, as was suggested by Board Member Nocella
And I understand, Ms. Finner, that that's something we can do and have prepared
Yes.
for the next meeting.
Yes.
And then I think at that point, we can decide whether a task force is really the step we want to go, because it is a lot of work and a lot of cost and resources. And as you've all heard from here, we want everyone to pass, and we'll do all we can to make sure that people have a bright future and we get more people out there working. So more information, and we'll come back at the next meeting and talk
may I
about
say,
it. Future.
The people here that are representing the schools, can you let the students know we want them to pass and succeed, and we're behind them 100%? Thank you.
But we're not willing to lower
No,
standards.
obviously.
That's the key.
Because we want them to be the best they can be.
So if we could, oh, absolutely, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And I don't know how much control you guys have over this, but for the reading, I know as a reader, I've been reading for almost 15 years now. When we read for our high four voice, we like consistency. We have readers that we like to read the high four voice, so we're consistent. I don't know how much they practice, the readers, before the test. I know with us, we even when we do a mock CSR, something we'll practice, you know. So I don't know how much goes into that with the testing too. If you have someone off or someone doing something different, the students will, nerves are gonna shoot up. So, just a consistency, so it's not choppy, or, just being a reader for 15 years, you know who you can read with, and if you're reading with someone different, it can be thrown off a little bit, and the students feel that. They know. At our school, they know who's going to be off. They can feel it. So I don't know if this makes sense for people that haven't taken down dictation, but there's sometimes the consistency can be lost if a reader is doing their own thing. So
Do we change the readers?
yes.
We do not have the luxury of having the same readers all the time anymore. So yes, they do change.
So thank you. That's all I'm going to say.
Sorry?
They're all experienced.
Yeah, they're all experienced readers, but yeah, they do change from test to test.
I guess that whole concept too of mimicking a little bit about what happens in the real world. You don't have clear speakers or folks with accents, and so it's a hard thing to balance. But I respect your comment and I understand where it's coming from. Thank you. If we could take a 5-minute comfort break for folks before we start with our next agenda item, which is the Online Skills Exam Task Force. In session. And we're now on to agenda item 7, which is our Online Skills Exam Task Force report that I'm very excited to hear about from our task force members.
Okay, I will start off and talk a little bit about how our task force was convened, who participated, which we had great participation, by the way. We had North and South representation, meetings in both North and South. We had seasoned court reporters, schools, new court reporters, students, all had a seat at the table and were very much involved in our discussions, in our deliberations. Mary Beth Eberhardt from Real Time Coach came and did a presentation for us on how Real Time Coach works, so that the mystery and many of the questions that we had, all the questions we had, were dispelled, and so that we could move on to what it was we were trying to achieve with the online skills. So I feel that we had great input, and because of that, we have a really good results in terms of recommendations and going forward. So I think, Tony, you were going to talk about the recommendations, right? Or you maybe had more things to say.
Well, were you going to go over
the overview of the process, or, and then I'll go into the recommendations, or I can do both?
Oh, I can do overview of the process. So,
Okay.
I don't know if you have your agenda, it would be on page 63. So, overview of the process. The candidates will apply as they currently do. They submit an application demonstrating their eligibility, the fees. We are recommending the fee stays the same at $40, which lasts for a 3-year exam cycle, and raising the per section exam fee to $50. It's made to encourage candidates to be ready to take the exam before they apply, and to discourage candidates from just sitting for the exam simply as a pretest. So maybe that will help with our pass rates. Candidates will receive an email confirmation with a link to Real-Time Coach, get a username and a password. The email will include instructions to practice the testing procedure, which can be done unlimited times, so that we're trying to get them familiar with the process. When the candidate is comfortable with the process, the next step is then to schedule a proctored practice. Upon successful completion of the proctored practice, the testing session may be scheduled by the candidate. So at that point, they can go ahead and schedule. They're encouraged to test their equipment each time they initiate a practice session, as updates to the software may have occurred between attempts to connect. Once they're connected to ProctorU for the exam, the candidate is prompted to download an applet, which will in turn connect the candidate's computer to the proctor via a two-way audio and video connection. After they're connected to the proctor via webcam and screen sharing software, the proctor asks to see the candidate's ID and final notice. At this point, the candidate may not leave the proctor's site. So they have to be within that proctor's eyesight from that point on. Candidate is then asked to verify that she has read the affidavit, and here's the proposed language. By agreeing to the terms of this disclaimer, I am aware of and accept the policies of the Court Reporters Board of California, the board, concerning testing, honesty, and integrity. This policy is available online on the board's website at courtreportersboard.ca.gov. I further attest that the skills exam I am submitting is solely my own work, developed during the exam session. I have used no materials or aids to take this exam. I further attest that, to the best of my knowledge, I have not retained a copy, either audio, text, or stenographic, of the skills exam. I'm just reading from here, so mostly. Further, if I discover at any time that I have accidentally retained any copy, I will immediately delete it, any and all formats, and notify the board promptly of the discovery. If I have printed notes from the exam session, I will destroy the notes upon completion of my testing session in front of the proctor. I further attest that I will not share any copies of this exam with others, nor will I share its content, terminology, or topic, either privately or on a public forum. I understand that doing so may constitute a violation of Business and Professions Code 123, a misdemeanor, and will result in the loss of current and future testing opportunities. After that, candidates will then be asked to use their webcam to do a 360-degree pan of their testing area so that the proctor may view the candidate's surroundings. When the proctor is satisfied with the verification of the candidate's identity and the security of the surroundings, the candidate returns to the Real-Time Coach site and initiates access to the exam. The proctor will enter a password, and when the candidate is ready, she will click the play button. The candidate may elect to write the approximate 3-minute warm-up material or proceed directly to the approximate 12-minute exam. Upon completion of the exam, The candidate will upload their steno notes file within 2 minutes in PDF format to the Real-Time Coach site. Upon completion of the transcription of the steno notes, the candidate will copy the text file onto the Real-Time Coach site and submit it for grading within the allotted testing time period of 2.5 hours. Candidates will receive a provisional exam score immediately. Exams receiving between 40 and 80 errors will be forwarded to the board for further review by board staff. Okay. It's a lot.
Yeah, and some of it, if the students, either for the reporters who have taken the RPR, CRR, et cetera, exam, or the students who have taken the RPR exam, a lot of this is the exact same thing that the student taking the California CSR test are the same steps because of the fact that it is through Real-Time Coach and it is through ProctorU. One nice thing of going into this is that we basically let NCRA deal with all the headaches of starting a new program or implementing a new program, and they got to deal with the challenges, shall I say. I was on the board of NCRA when this came into effect, and they went through the beginning stages of it and had to deal with some of the unexpected challenges of the program, and so they saved us a lot of time in having it, by their having experienced some of the things they experienced and then having to resolve those issues. That saved us from having to do that. So what I'm going to do right now is go over the recommendations for both on-site and online exams, and at the end make a motion to move forward for online testing for the CSR exam.
Can we talk a little bit first before you make that motion?
Oh, yes.
And get any questions that folks have answered as well as public comments?
I don't think it was a motion, it was a recommendation from the task force.
Oh, I thought I heard her say she would make a motion.
No, it's just a recommendation.
Yeah, I may have used the word motion, but yeah, a recommendation for a motion, or for the board to adopt.
Okay.
Is the better word.
We'll do all the other things.
Yeah, I don't have the word motion in here, but that's what it is. Okay. So for the recommendation for both on-site and online examinations is that the board will establish a period of up to 2 years offering both online and on-site exams in conjunction with each other. And during the pilot period of this 2-year pilot period, candidates will have the option to either take the exam online at a physical location, or they'll have the option to take the, they'll have the option of taking the online exam or the on-site exam within the testing period. They choose the online exam, that's what they'll take. They will not have the ability to take the online and then turn around, take the on-site exam. It'll be one or the other during that testing period. And for the online exam, it'll be announced that there's a 7-day period when they can take the online exam, and that's when they will do it. And of course, the on-site exam will be just like it is now. There'll be a date, and this is when the test is going to be given, just like it is now. As far as the online exam, there will be a survey afterwards to help the board evaluate the online testing process. The current registration process that is in place for the on-site exam will be used for the online exam also, so that won't change. The online exam will still keep the same 2-minute lead-in before the exam without a break, which is the current practice for the on-site exam. Now, the transcription time, because of the requirement that, that they use CAT software now to transcribe versus no typewriters, that the transcription time is going to be short to 2.5 hours, and that's true of both on-site and online. And the task force recommends coordinating with schools to help prepare students for the shorter transcription, period. And then there'll be no breaks will be allowed, including smoking or bathroom breaks for the time of of course, taking the test plus the transcription period. Then the online test, there'll be no available, tests will not be available for distribution to candidates. But as Yvonne mentioned, because it's on Real-Time Coach, right after the test, they will get a printout, or they will see what kind of errors they made. So they'll see whether it's punctuation errors, did they have huge drops everywhere, was it a certain kind, words, fingering, they'll get an overview of what they were doing. And, but I have a little note here that says that this feature will not be available during the pilot period. So after, I can't remember what Mary Beth said.
Can I
about
address that?
Yes, please.
So the reason that that's not going to be available is with working with OPES, it was really important to them that the online test and the on-site test be as nearly the same as possible. Now, clearly, the delivery method is going to be different. There are procedures that are involved with online that won't happen on-site. But in trying to align those two tests, because the online test for test security is not going to be given. The on-site test becomes a one-time that we then share with everyone. Online, it would become part of a larger test bank, so it would not be shared with everyone. They won't be throwaway tests anymore, in other words. Because we are guarding and saving that test, then we wouldn't give it back to the students for an appeal process. So Real-Time Coach has the ability to feed back to the students where their errors are, but the human graders do not. So for the on-site test, we would not be able to give them that same benefit. So to keep the tests equal, there won't be any feedback during that pilot period.
Can I ask a question, a technical question regarding some of the stuff that I'm hearing? I continue to hear what sounds like a vendor's name over and over again. The program appears to have been, the recommendation appears to have been written with regard to this particular vendor.
It's a one-up, and I worked with contracts on that. There is no other vendor.
There's no other vendor that does what?
That provides online dictation testing. I've contacted all of the
that's
vendors
that's okay.
that are available for schools, and none of them are interested in developing a licensing concept.
The fact that they're not, okay, so I don't want to say something categorically and turn out to be wrong, but my concern is that right now it doesn't appear that you have the authority to do a sole source under state process.
I checked with contracts, and they said we were okay to go ahead. So we've pre-done it.
So this is an IT purchase. The IT contracts alone doesn't get involved. I'm not trying to step on your toes. What I'm concerned about is I didn't understand the recommendations when I was reviewing this were being made with regard to a specific vendor and only one vendor.
So the recommendations are not to go forward with a specific vendor, but we worked extensively with a vendor in developing these. So I would imagine that the eventual motion would be for staff to proceed forward with contracting or whatever. So it's not going to name a vendor.
Okay. But it's noted your concern. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Where?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see here. Where was I?
Number 8.
Number 8, thank you. Okay. Then, also, what will, guidelines will be created for ProctorU proctors to avoid interruptions and distractions, because when NCRA was undergoing their pilot project with ProctorU, there were those issues. So we, again, derived the benefit of knowing what to look out for and what to have in place prior to the pilot project. But you know, just when you think you have everything covered, something pops up, so that we'll work on that. And then the last point is candidates will not be notified in advance of whether the proceeding is court or deposition. So at this point, the task force is making the recommendation to the board to go forward with online testing under the recommendations for both on-site and online exams.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. When you mentioned the national and there being beta testing or they're going through the kinks of online, how long ago have they started this review with the dictation?
I went on the board, NCRA board in 2011, and they had already started what I would call the alpha testing for it. They were getting right into the beta testing. I'm trying to think of the timeline. I think the first year that I was on the board, from 2011 to 2012, they were doing beta testing, but it was like with different board members. And then they were bringing in, and then they got a bigger group of working reporters, that were already like tested RPRs, they had already passed these particular certification tests to do that. Then they, and the first plan was to announce a date that the tests were going to be on May 12th of, at this time, depending on what, East Coast time, Midwestern times, Pacific Coast time. And that was their way of learning that you can't do that all at the same time because it crashes their system. And so it took them about 2 years to sort of work out all the kinks. And so that enabled this vendor to bring in a much better product that they demoed for us compared to with NCRA. They were really inventing it, putting it together, saying, here it is, and then not intentionally saying, okay, you're our guinea pig, but that's really what it boiled down to.
And that was in 2011?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were, actually, they were already in the process of working on it when I went onto the board in 2011.
Okay. And I heard this trying very hard to make sure that what happens in the large testing centers is equal to that which would happen in your own home if you were to take the test or using ProctorU. I'm curious, what are the differences between the way that we're testing now and the suggestion that's being put forth? I.e., I heard no breaks. You can take breaks in the current tests. Are there any other?
Sounds like, and I was going to ask how long you have now to transcribe. Here you have 2.5 hours, which is different.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Yeah. What are the
Half an
lists?
Half an hour different?
Yep,
Mhm.
it's currently 3 hours.
3 hours, okay, now it'll be 2.5.
Yeah.
All right.
And so for this pilot period, it would be both for the brick and mortar or the on-site and the online will have the same amount of time to transcribe. Because the on-site is also using computers. I mean, so the modality of the transcription is going to be the same whether you're at home or whether you're in a facility like this.
So maybe I should be more clear.
Okay.
The distinction between dictation online and what we do or what was going to happen tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that we were on transcription, the aspect of it. Okay.
So far I've heard no breaks,
That's it.
and that's
Yeah.
it, and the time.
And then one other question I have is, it says it could be court or deposition. Do we have 4-voice deposition tests?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And right now, we do tell them in advance when they get their notice if it's going to be court or deposition.
Okay.
But because we can't do that, because the test that they will get online will be random, so we can't tell them ahead of time what it will be, then to make it equal, we wouldn't tell them on site what they're going to get.
Okay, good. Okay. Those are the only differences I could see. misheard.
It's the only thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's it.
Those two items. Okay. Are there any questions from other board members on the online?
Can I make a comment on, so we're changing the time, or they're proposing to change the time. So that's not like that would happen in November, because there is time that we would have to put in place for contracting, for getting everything up and running. So we would envision that that would be the time that the schools would be able to help their students make a transition over to that new period. It wouldn't be hurry up and do it before November. So I just want everybody to realize that aspect. It's kind of intuitive to us because we've been working with it, but if it's new information, it might not be that obvious.
Working with government, do you have sort of a ballpark figure of how long it would take to even to start that 2-year run of a pilot project?
I think I can get everything up based on my my conversations with the Office of Information Services and Contracts Unit. I think I can do that within a year.
So we're in 2017, 2018, 19, so we're probably talking about maybe starting that 2-year term sometime
Next year.
next summer to fall? Okay,
Yes.
and then 2 years from then?
Yes.
Okay.
Did the task force, is the ultimate goal, as the task force understands it, is that it will eventually be all online? Or, okay.
Yes.
So the pilot project is really about giving people 2 options, but eventually it'll only be one, which is online. Was there discussions about testing centers versus online testing centers versus doing it independently?
There was, and there was a really good reason why the testing centers would not work, and I'm trying to remember why.
We didn't really talk about, I don't
Yeah,
remember talking about
it was
testing
very-
centers per se.
Yeah, it
But
was.
it was contemplated that it was likely that schools would become testing centers, that they
Yes.
would have, because they have the ability to log in or what have you, that they would, as a convenience for their students,
Yeah.
end up offering their lab or whatever as a location that the student could take the
Yeah,
test.
that possibility exists if the schools want to do that.
If they want.
Yeah, if they want, schools want to do it, it would be permissible to do it.
And I believe that's a good idea, particularly because if you look at the equipment the person needs, they might not have a shredder at home or a printer at home or whatever, external
Yeah.
webcam. So the schools would be a perfect place to.
And, you know,
facilitate
and bring up a good point. I stopped where I stopped because I thought before I go on to the rest of what was in this packet about the online testing, we should, you know, find out if the board wants to, you know, approve the recommendation or, you know, to do the pilot project, because if the board does not approve the recommendation or take on the recommendation to go ahead with the pilot project, then we don't need to do the rest of the packet.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So are there additional questions about what has been put forth? I have another question.
Sure.
So as it relates to internet issues or being dropped, what was the task force discussion on that and how that would affect students passing? Because those things do happen nowadays.
Yeah.
Like
They
quite a
do.
bit.
But that's,
Yeah, we did address that, and that will be under the examination administration.
Right.
And what the task force came up with is that if the internet failure occurs, the proctor will initially investigate the issue. If the failure is within the first 5 minutes of the exam, an automatic exam reload will occur. If the failure is more than 5 minutes into the exam, the test will end and the proctor will file an incident report with the board. The executive officer will review the incident report on a case-by-case basis to make a determination whether to allow retesting within the same exam cycle and if additional fees will be waived.
Okay.
that's all under the next part, policy and procedures.
I did read it, but I think the public should
Yeah.
really hear, because I'm sure they have those questions, what happens?
I
Yes.
can give a concrete example. For instance, if the candidate would say, power went out in my whole neighborhood. And then that would be part of my evaluation, and then I could say, absolutely, you can take the test again. I mean, that's outside of your capabilities. I mean, that's not in your control. If they have weak signal and it's a chronic thing, maybe the suggestion to them is you don't have to pay again, but you need to find a different place with a stronger internet signal, so it's less likely to happen, that type of thing. But that's why it's on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. It's kind of interesting for having this discussion after we just talked about how low the rates were and changing things, and now this is another change, and it could be a big one for some people. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this. If you go to prior tests or prior meetings, I've talked about this, and I think there's a camaraderie that's missed and a rite of change and all the things that can happen as it relates to the internet that can really throw students off of their game. It's already a very hard and difficult, challenging test. I do realize that we have other parts of our exam that are online, and maybe this is the way of the world, everything goes that way, but I have mixed feelings, and if we do move forward, in my opinion, I don't think the end goal should be that we have the exam online, everyone, but that you have an option of doing it online or coming in maybe once a year instead of several times a year. But I know one of the reasons why we're looking at this is because of the costs and how much they've increased, and we are a small board. But sometimes costs, maybe that's not the reason why to change this. Are there any other thoughts before I open it up to
Yes,
public
then
comments?
I would like to comment back to what you just said.
Please.
Because I think in the end, the students will benefit from having online testing. It will be cheaper for them. They don't have to pay for hotel space. They can presumably do it in a setting that is more comfortable to them, their own home somewhere, or in their school, or somewhere that is more comfortable. So a little less strenuous. They aren't going to be potentially in a room with a lot of other very nervous people who are maybe just adding more to their nervousness. So I think from several points of view that it will be better for students. I think after a while, students, because of graduation or moving on, the students aren't going to know what happened before. So they aren't going to know about the online testing. I don't think we should continue to offer both. I think you have the pilot project, and that's considered the transition, and then you move on to the full online testing. I think there's not just the immediate financial thing for the students, but there's a financial concern on these on-site tests about the cost, but also it's a lot of staff time. And we really could use our staff to do some other things. They spend a lot of time setting up these on-site tests. So I think from many points of view, going online, it's the way of the future, but it is also, I think, a benefit to students and to the board.
Following up, I agree with you. Not everything you've said, but some of what you said. And I also agree that there are some students who will do better in a single setting. But I also agree there will be other students who may not do so well. And maybe a bigger environment or a different environment, we shouldn't just let go. But
Okay, well, that's a
it's
difference
one
of
opinion.
Right.
And may I say, I think, and I invite the schools to speak, particularly when we have online programs, that the students are going to be used to having online tests. And so it's going to be more the norm for them than going into a hotel room. And I'd also suggest, I agree. I think I'm going to be voting in favor of the recommendation, and as long as there is that pilot program, and if we learn lessons in that pilot program that need to have a shift again to have both or whatever, that be an opening. But right now, this is the most perfect opportunity to see both worlds and see how the students work with it and how it saves us money, the whole thing. So anyway, I'll be voting in favor, but I would like to hear if someone would like to speak who has an online school, if they foresee that this would be good because the students are used to being online.
Yeah, so I guess this is perfect time to open up for public comments. They're ushering you to the table, so you have to speak.
For the dreaded online people. I'm John Kolosinski. I'm the president emeritus of Bryan University, and been there about 7 years now. And when I first came, they were the big court reporting school. I used to run a competitor years ago in the Valley called Merritt College, and Bryan was always the Harvard of court reporting schools. So when they called me, I was ready to retire and said we're going into this, and I thought, well, okay, I'll try another thing in court reporting. I'm 25 years older. I ought to be a little bit smarter. They told me the next thing, we're going online. We're taking this online. Now I'm thinking, I remember court reporting, and I'm thinking it online. It's like, wow, that's amazing. But I will tell you, in the last 7 years, it's been amazing. The increase in technology. I look at my students' pass rates on the RPR, way higher than the CSR. Take it when they want. If they test well at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, that's when they take their test. Also, Cheryl, who was here earlier, is one of our graduates. She did the entire program. She's our second ever online graduate. She took the whole program online, passed her CSR the first time, and she will tell you today that she feels she excelled in the field coming out of online school quicker, simply because she was totally familiar with the technology. Uploading, thumb drives, all that world was no big deal for her. The cloud, it all made sense. So I think for students who are going to school online, this will definitely be an advantage. The problem with campus schools for us was that you have to have a location, and people from a certain geographic area only can go to that. We were interested in making this available to kids in North Dakota and in Florida and in Texas and Alabama. We have students pretty much in every state now, including California, and they're all online today, all of them. So it works, and there's a lot of benefits. I agreed with what Elizabeth said earlier on her comments about the cost. That's a big factor too, but it's going to take time, it's going to take change, and I always tell my students, if at my age I can accept the change, you better learn too. So
Did you work on the task force by chance?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, RTC was originally developed at Bryan many years ago. The original one. Now the new people have taken on to much greater heights, but that was our concept way back. So and at an NCRA it's working terrific.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Monique Black with Deposition Reporters again. Having recently taken the RPR and CRR online for NCRA, I have mixed feelings too, but I wanted to touch on one point that Ms. O'Neill said. You said that they would be told their errors at the end of the exam, and that's not what happens with the RPR or the CRR.
Or this.
You're given just your pass, or if you have a potential pass, your percentage rate, but it doesn't tell you your errors. It just goes, thank you, you have passed with 90, or your initial grading is 97% or whatever it is. But it's not like other dictation where when you upload your file, it'll tell you you missed this comma, you had the wrong word, you missed a designation or something like that. I'm not sure if it's a different program, but it's something. Okay.
Now, just reading through this, I think that's true here too. They said you're not allowed to have your test. So you're not allowed to know what errors you actually made.
It's not specific errors, but they give you the type of errors.
Okay.
So they would say you had 15 drops, or you missed 3
Okay, then
speaker
that's fair.
identification.
Okay, so it's a
Yeah.
little bit different.
It is a little bit
Okay.
different.
I had issues taking it at home. I prefer if NCRA had once a year a brick and mortar because I do better in that environment. Instead, I was concerned my telephone was going to ring because I actually live in the country and I have a home phone and I can't turn it off. I was concerned my dog was going to walk by or those types of things. So for me, I like having a brick and mortar that I can go to and everybody's in testing mode. It's just my personal preference, but the potential's there and it's great. It's just a different experience. Yeah. And I understand for cost savings, but if it's the mere fact that we could have one a year when it's your state exam that's licensing, I will say in all honesty, every proctor I've had, I've taken 4 exams. Actually, I've taken it 5 times because I had issues technologically. Every proctor has been different. And not every proctor watches to make sure you delete everything. So obviously you take and sign the oath that you do it yourself, but it's not as closely monitored as you might think it is.
Well, neither is the brick or mortar, and I can tell you that from experience.
Tony. So that's just my
Just
feedback.
saying.
I just wanted to,
Yeah, no, that's the biggest fear.
yeah.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
testimony. Yeah, no, it's important.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments? Oh, okay. Hello, welcome.
Hi, I'm Kay Reindl, and I'm from Humphreys University, and I was on the task force. And I would just like to just state a few things that you might want to consider in regard to this. I think it would be important to take a look at the NCRA pass rates, if possible, to see what happened with their pass rates when they went online. I was chief examiner for that exam for 24 years, and so I know that was a big change. I also would like for you to consider, I heard mention that schools might make good testing sites, and I just want to mention that there's some issues with that, why that may not work. I can't really imagine a school being able to accommodate a student one-on-one in that setting, and you couldn't meet the requirements of the proctor to have a room full of test takers at the same time. So it would have to be a one-on-one situation. And I don't know that the school would want to take on the liability of someone mistakenly opening a door or banging on the wall next door or anything like that that might happen. Also, this is a 4-voice test. I don't think, I may be wrong, and please speak up if this is true, I don't know that any schools have yet successfully administered 4-voice qualifiers. So essentially what this could do is require that students have to pass the NCRA exam in order to qualify to take the CSR, rather than qualifying through a school. These are just points that, you know, I'm not saying this would preclude you from moving forward. I don't want that to be, you know, my parting comment or whatever. But they are issues that I know people who are not court reporters may not be aware of. And I think that's it, actually.
Can I ask a question, because I'm well confused about the 4-voice qualifiers?
Mm-hmm.
Say the schools are not doing 4-voice qualifiers?
Online. I don't think
I
there
see
are
what you're
any
saying.
currently
Okay.
successfully administering them online.
Could you come forward? Could you come forward? That's okay. Everyone out in TV land may not get to hear you.
Actually, the first board meeting I ever attended here in 2010, we were appealing to the board for the rights to give the online qualifier. That's when I met most of you, actually. And actually, Ms. Lesensky stepped forward and spoke on our behalf, and we've been administering them ever since. All my online students have been for years taking the 4-voice online qualifier.
Are there any other public comments? Sure, please.
So as the district representative for Southern California at the mock CSR, a couple students came up and asked me to share some of their concerns with you today regarding this process and possible changes. One of them was the concern about doing away with the appeals process. My understanding from what Ms. Fenner indicated is because of the way the exam would be graded and the fact that they would not be throwaway tests, you would not be able to provide the applicants with the opportunity to read through the tests themselves. I have several colleagues that are now working reporters that went through the appeals process, some of which even drove over for the appointment to listen to the audio and grade their test against it personally. So that would be one thing that I know the students, and myself included, would be interested to know how you would handle any possible discrepancies or any concerns students have once they receive their non-passing grade, to alleviate concern that maybe something wasn't corrected appropriately. I know that I personally have experience with RTC. I actually started my court reporting education at Bryan College back in 2008, and I believe Eric Evans was running the program at that time. We did use RTC, and I remember back then, which obviously things have improved since then, there were a lot of discrepancies with the copy and paste and grading feature. There would be times that I would drop a couple words and it would suddenly turn into a 10-word drop, something to that effect. I'm assuming, based on what you all have shared today, that all of those snafus have since been eradicated over the last 10 years, and I'm confident that the board will do its due diligence to make sure that that is taken under consideration. But that's another concern of mine, to make sure, especially if you do away with the appeals process, that there would be some checks and balances in place for anything like that that might happen. I will tell you, having taken the RPR on ground, one of the experiences was at one of the locations for Sage College, and we did run into the usual noise disruptions. I happened to be sitting in the back of the room, and that school, if you haven't been there, butts up against the 8 freeway. So I was trying to listen to a dictation from a tiny laptop at the front of the room with no speakers, with big rigs driving by behind me, and that was quite a challenge. So I do share in the concern that disruptions are something to be accounted for. Obviously, at home, you don't have complete control over the noises people are making outside. Hopefully you would be able to pick a testing time where you wouldn't have a gardener mowing the lawn or something to that effect. But the other issue as well would be making sure that the proctors, like Ms. Fenner indicated, have a clear understanding of what the guidelines are. I know that colleagues have shared the proctors have interrupted them mid-test and asked, "Why can't I see your hands? I need you to move the camera." I think maybe they didn't really understand what the test entailed, and the fact that you can't move your hands except on the writer during the actual examination. So those are just all points that I indicated I would share with the board, both from students and, like I said, from myself.
Thank you. Can you, yeah.
So that both of those points did come up, Jennifer, through the task force process, and the elimination of the appeals process created angst for everyone because it is such a part of what we do. So to try to overcome that, what we decided to do was, especially at the very beginning. So right now, if the test is within 10 points, then it would be regraded. Maybe we would make that even 30 or 40 points. I mean, if you were within 40 points of passing, I mean, almost doubling it, especially at the beginning, we would have human eyes go over and just make sure that the computer grading is the standard that is acceptable to the board. And as we assure ourselves that that is the case and that changes don't have to be made, then we can start looking at fewer tests because we trust the program a bit more. So it's not, especially at the beginning, it's not like the case of, oh, you missed by 2, you can't appeal, too bad. It won't be that case at all. And as far as the proctor, we have heard problems with proctors, and the information that came to us is if we can put the training guidelines together, which is one of the recommendations from the task force, we can communicate that to whatever vendor would provide the proctors, and especially because what we are contemplating is a time-specific. It wouldn't be, especially at the beginning, we wouldn't say court reporters can test any time of the year, whenever. Starting out, they would have a 7-day period that would overlap the on-site test. So it's relatively easy to get the same proctors and say, okay, we want court reporting proctors for this. Not necessarily court reporting proctors, but they've proctored a court reporting exam, and so they know you can't interrupt at this point, that type of thing. So we do, the task force was aware of those concerns.
Okay. Any other public comments? We close. Okay.
more comments or discussions from the board? If not, is there a motion? Or how would you, the task force, this is a direct question, how would you like to handle what are various adoptions within the online skills examination policy and procedures?
Well, I think we first need to decide whether we are going with the online testing. And then you're talking about the policy and procedures. I think we have two different
So I
parts,
think
right?
I
Is that-
heard that the majority of folks are for that, moving forward with the online
But don't we need to
testing.
do a motion to move forward
Well-
with that? No?
I have a motion all ready to go.
Oh.
Okay, Rosalie, you can do
We-
your. Well, technically, it would be a recommendation from the task force for the board to accept the recommendation to go forward.
That's my motion.
Oh. Jeez.
Would you like me to say it?
Yes.
Is it appropriate, though? It should be a motion or just, I mean, bottom line is, I have a motion that the board adopts the recommendations of the task force to include the pilot program. And if the board has the ability, and the board have the ability to return to a physical location, testing sites if history dictates that's necessary.
And that's after the 2 years.
Exactly.
We will
We will look at
revisit
that and
this.
say, okay, this is not working, or this is super great. Let's keep moving forward.
Okay, that's the motion on the table. Is there,
Did you write that down?
Pretty much,
Can
yes.
you repeat it, please?
Okay, ready? I move that the board adopts the recommendation of the task force to include that pilot program. And if the board, and that the board have the ability to return to physical location testing if, I use the word history dictates the necessity. I don't know if history is the right word, but if, because it's not working, we can change our mind. Basically what I'm saying. So the history in 2 years, our history.
To reevaluate in 2 years? Is that the word?
To reevaluate, to return. I said that had the board has the ability to return to a physical location, testing site, if history dictates the necessity. I know it's convoluted, but it's the best I could do.
Before you, anybody seconds, so we don't have to amend. I just want to make sure that we have moved to adopt recommendation of task force to include the pilot program and the board have the ability to return to a physical location if not working after 2 years. Maybe we can say and the board reevaluate after 2 years.
Sure, that's good. I mean, reevaluate, I don't want to be too la la la.
I
But I
know.
think that's good.
So I'm hearing from my left, our counsel, that she has some things to add.
Okay.
So that there's some understanding going forward, so you understand moving forward with this process with the specific recommendations which haven't been addressed individually. Some of those proposals will require regulatory changes. I'm seeing requirements for equipment that are not currently standard for the exam. That will require a regulation change. I heard during the initial discussions there will be a fee change. That will require a regulation. I'm hearing that there is an elimination of an appeal process. That will require a regulation. I'm hearing that there is a change for what the fee includes. The practice examinations. That will require a reg change because it relates to fees. There's a process laid out with regard to various internet failures, interruptions, etc. What constitutes an exam failure? That will require a reg change. The software that they're required to have or have access to, if it's different than software currently required, will likely require a reg change.
Can these reg changes be done collectively
Yes.
or individually?
Yes, no, it would be one reg package, but it would be a substantial regulatory package.
Well, can you define substantial? What does that mean?
So, your standard regulatory package, your fee increase that was discussed earlier, it's one package, it's a straightforward and relatively streamlined process. The same requirements are required for that process, but when you're dealing with this many changes and the issues would be things like the number of public comments that you might receive on and have to respond to, the amount of explanation that you're going to have to explain to the various oversight agencies as to why the change is being made, a determination as to whether or not your current statutory authority is sufficient. I don't see an authority issue so far here, but that would be one of the things, that's one of the boxes that we have to tick on the regulation. So you're talking about a fee regulation, which is probably going to be 60 pages, versus a regulation like this, which may be several binders worth of documentation.
That kind of shuts the motion down just a little bit.
Never mind.
Well,
Moving forward
well,
in a
does
text-
that mean we don't move forward?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
So, having heard from our council, how does that affect our motion that's on the table? And how can we move? What would the future look like if we say, yes, we'd like to move forward with these changes? What then would be the next step?
The next step would be for me to sit down and start gathering the documentation. I was not your counsel during the task force. I don't know what written materials exist. I don't know how some of these recommendations came about. That would all be stuff that would need to be made part of the record. And then we start in the process of drafting the various documents related to the regulatory process. If it's the board's pleasure, we can do it. It's just not as simple as flipping the switch. And I didn't want to get you all too far down the process and throw water on the process and say, wait a minute, we have to do this, that, and the other thing. Even just to change the fee, even if that was the only proposal in here that looked like it required a regulation, would still have to do a regulation. And if it was just that, I would make a recommendation that you include that in your renewal fee regulation.
Because it is the same code section.
Yes.
Any thoughts from the board
Yes,
on
we
that
still.
information?
Yes, I think we still have to proceed. It has to be done at some point. So,
I'm not saying that our conclusion shouldn't be that, but I think stopping the motion for a second and listening to what our council is saying, and then marinating on that and understanding what she is suggesting to us. Yeah, that's one of my favorite words, marinating. Sorry, I've been in Texas for the past week and a
oh,
half.
I see, all that tri-tip or something.
I haven't
right?
said y'all yet, so. So that's all that I'm trying to get the board to do, is just think about what's just been told to us. I just learned this today, a second ago, too.
So, can I ask you, so is it to our advantage to make two different motions?
What would you contemplate the motions looking like? And that's just so that
I don't
understand.
know. I'm just trying to figure out. All right, we want to move forward with our proposal, our recommendation. We want to move forward with that. Okay, fine. So but I think we need to codify that we want to move forward. But then, how do we move forward with?
I'm not sure that that you can make a motion to start the regulatory process. I am not sure that because of the format, I didn't recognize when I was reviewing this hearing the context has helped me a lot. You have to remember, I'm brand new counsel.
Right.
Some of these things I wouldn't have known were a change. They say that they're proposed for adoption, but I don't know what equipment comes to an exam right now. I don't know what equipment an individual is required to have to take the exam now. I can tell you that saying that they have to have a specific set of headphones of a specific type with a recommendation of the type of headphones doesn't sound like something that they have to do right now. They don't have to bring headphones. They specifically don't have to bring wired over-the-ear headphones. And these are, so it wasn't until having a better understanding and after going through some of the process that we've gone through that I start to go, wait a minute, we have a potential issue here. So I don't think that the language that you have here is fully in the format that would necessarily come before the board to adopt the actual regulatory language.
Okay.
You can start the process, but I don't think you can actually adopt the regulation at this meeting.
So if we had, but we could adopt a motion saying we want to move forward with this, and that we want to begin, second motion, or maybe even part of the first, that we want to begin the regulatory process. Okay, and then how much would that delay going forward?
That is hard to say because this is a big package compared to the one that we were talking about earlier with regard to your fee and your budget situation. So more time is would absolutely be required. I know that you were hoping that this could get off the ground middle of next year, a year from now.
Yes.
So that would be not completely outside the realm of possibility, but that would require a lot of dedicated staff time to get to there from here. Maybe 6 months longer than that. You might be looking at your November exam or the next March exam. But, you know, I'm not going to tell you that there's no way we can get there, because a year is usually what we say for regulations. So even with some of the most complex ones. So it's probably still within the realm of possibility. It just needs to be something that you're prepared for. Usually when you're doing a major change in the form, one of the things I heard was a change in the length of time. So that's a format change. Usually when a board at the department does that, there is multiple years of advanced notice to the industry, to the students before, so that they can prepare for that. The bar changing its format, I think there was like 6 years of notice. So it wasn't even the people who are currently just starting out them saying you're going to take a different format of the exam. It was 2 full classes from now we're going to change the bar. So it may be that for a pilot to start the process of onboarding online could be something that we could do now, but maybe not necessarily. I mean, unless it's impossible to continue with a 3-hour exam. It may be that as you go through it, it's in 3 years, it will be a 2.5-hour exam instead of a 3-hour exam.
I hate to do this to everyone, but I'd like to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, I'm just going to remind you that in about 20 minutes I have to leave.
The flight's canceled. Our flight's canceled.
Sorry?
The
You're here
5:30?
for
It's
hours.
canceled?
Yeah. Sorry to give you that right away.
Let's take that break then.
Yes, please. So,
Oh.
5-minute break.
Oh.
Okay, we're back in session. Thank you everyone for that 5-10-minute comfort break there. So we're still with the agenda item 7, the online skills exam task force report. There's been a lot of things put out on the table new for quite a few of us. I think, however, we can move with some of the recommendations and policies and procedures. So just for formality and just making it very clear, I think we should put a motion out there to find out if everybody is on board with moving forward with online skills exam. I heard that over and over from Board Member Lozinski. Although I think I heard the majority was for it, but let's put it and make it formal.
I think we need to.
Let's do
I
it.
think
Would you
my-
like to make a motion?
I think my motion is still in effect then, because that is my motion. And then obviously it might take longer and we might have to go through and redo it, but let's move forward with the recommendations. Is that what you're asking?
Well, actually, just starting off, do we even want to consider online
Okay.
skills exam? And if everybody can get on agreement with that formally, then the second phase
Alright.
would be
Dealing with the
each individual policy and procedure and chiming in on those that are adopted 2017, as I understand, whether we agree with them or not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
At least that's what I heard from the task force, that was something they would like to do.
Review the policies, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, well
Which
then I
would we-
would make the motion that we move forward with online examination.
For a 2-year pilot program, is that what you
It's
wanna-
just period right now.
Period?
Just period, through Board Member Lazinski wanting all of us to just declare whether we would like to move forward with online skills exam, period.
Okay.
I so
Yes or no?
declare.
So your prior motion's withdrawn?
Correct.
Thank you.
One moment. Okay.
Do we have
Sorry.
a second?
Please.
I'll second, or,
Go for it.
Okay.
Vice Chair,
DC.
second.
Got it.
Roll call.
Ms. Crom?
Yes.
Ms. Lisinski?
Yes.
Ms. Nocella?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Hurt?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And I'd like to add, for discussion, that's a yes with the thought of there being dual.
That they're what? I'm
That-
sorry, I didn't hear the
that
word.
It's not only online, but there's an actual testing too.
The opportunity for both.
Opportunity for both, thank you very much.
I
So-
don't think, I mean, I don't think anything in the motion or discussion that we talked about was a complete withdrawal of the in-person test yet. We're just talking about exploring online.
I'm
Or
clear,
going- yeah,
I'm
going-
clear,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I just want everyone to know my position when they hear me vote yes or no on certain things. As it relates to online skills exam, I see a path for it, but I also see that there should also be a path for folks to go in and test in an actual room. Just a commentary. So then that moves me to,
Did we need public comment on the new motion?
yeah.
We should cover that base now then.
I apologize.
No, it's okay.
That's okay.
I've missed it.
Say what?
So is there any public comment
My job.
on that motion that we just agreed upon? No.
Just comment?
Thank you. I think that's adequate.
Okay, sorry about that. So then this takes me to the online skills examination policy and procedures that the task force came up with. And I was informed that moving forward, it would make sense to look at those that are proposed for adoption of July 2017. And the board chime in on whether they agree or disagree with that policy. And then as it relates to that being possibly a regulation, our executive officer and our council will go back and figure out which policy, which one of these items can be policy versus those that have to go through the regulatory process. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
And we will bring that language back at the next meeting.
At the next meeting.
Bring what language back?
Regulatory language.
Stuff
Proposed
we have to
regulatory
fix.
language.
Okay.
So some things are policy, some things require regulation.
We're not gonna hash it out here, though.
No, it's
It won't
forever.
happen.
So for instance, if I have questions or clarification of things that I think should be, language that should be included in the equipment needed portion, we can talk about that at a later date?
No, that's what we're gonna do right now.
Okay.
But whether this goes into a regulatory package or a policy package is then determined and comes back.
We're doing,
For discussion.
we're doing concept and language right here, right now, on these policies.
Got it.
And then we'll bring back based on that.
Okay.
So the first proposed for adoption July 2017 is the equipment needed. And are there any comments folks would like to make on what they see before them?
Just 2 comments. One, I think you need to make it very explicitly clear that this is equipment needed that should be provided by the test taker. And number 5, I just experienced this on a plane ride, so I want clarification. Headphones to be wired, there are some headphones that are wired but need charging. Just so that they're wired does not mean that they work. So either you need to say no self-charging wired headphones or wired headphones that are fully charged.
How about
Does
just
that
fully
make
charged
sense?
wired headphones?
It's a security issue, we just don't want Bluetooth.
Right, but we also don't want to be blamed for the malfunctioning equipment. So or not charged equipment, right?
Or, I'm sorry, how did you want to word it?
And I'm fine either way. I think you need to have self-sustaining wired headphones. You can't have wired headphones that need to be charged.
Or just
Because
fully charged?
if they show up and they're not charged and they're still wired and they're not working,
But they have battery machines as well. It's like we don't take responsibility for any of the equipment that doesn't work.
So then you need to clarify that.
Got it.
Okay.
So those would be amendments, correct?
Yes.
We're making notes, and then that's what we would bring back.
Yes.
For approval.
Okay.
Those aren't actually, what was discussed so far isn't really a change to what's there. It's a, we think that it needs to be added.
Clarification.
Yes, and yes, I agree.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts on the equipment needed section? Okay.
I do have one question. In your task force meeting and discussions with regard to how this works, are there minimum specifications for the computer hardware equipment that must be met?
No, we came up with some things that we know work well, and so we put them out there, but they're not requirements.
Okay.
Are you suggesting that they should be?
No, not knowing enough about when I took the bar exam online, they actually told us your operating system must be X. You must have access to Y. If you're going to say that, if you know that going forward, a Windows 7 machine will not be able to run whatever the software is for this exam, we need to say right now, must be a Windows 10 or greater computer. But if you don't know that because it's right now a Windows 7 machine can access it, then that's probably not an issue. If any modern machine will access it, but if it needs certain, it can only run Windows Explorer, Internet Explorer, as opposed to Firefox or one of the other ones.
It requires Chrome or something. Yeah.
Right, right. If there's something like that, then we probably need to know that sooner rather than later, so that if it's something that's absolutely hard set, you can't take the exam unless you have X, then, that'll be something that ends up in a regulation.
Can
Can
I ask? But things change over time.
Yes.
And so we aren't necessarily going to know what those requirements are going to be down the road at the point that we put this in. So do we need to put in language saying check with something?
I will look into that. The problem is that the regulatory process as developed by the state legislature doesn't care that 2 years from now there's going to be a change and you may have to do the whole regulatory process over again. If you need to do the regulatory process, you need to do the regulatory process. So the fact that you're recognizing that there may be some inefficiencies built into the system, the process doesn't allow us to avoid those inefficiencies in most circumstances.
So I think your point's well taken, and you will go back with our executive officer and flesh out those details. Are there any other additional comments on the newly proposed 2017? Okay, so that takes us down to the next proposed for adoption, the practice examinations. Are there any specific comments or additions or things that you would like Ms. Spinner to focus on? No? Okay. I have a question. With the candidates may repeat the one practice dictation unlimited times in order to familiarize themselves with the process. Do we have a repository enough of tests at this point?
It's the same test.
Yes. Okay.
So that the object of that is so that they get practice hooking up. We're not in the business of providing them practice material. They're just so they can become familiar with the process.
Okay.
Yeah, so they know how to quickly upload their notes. So they do that over and over so that they don't even have to think about how to do it.
So I'm not a CSR. I was
Yeah.
reading this through attorney eyes.
Sure.
I didn't get that.
Oh.
So maybe
Let me
could be
see.
fleshed out a little bit more, made clear. That's all.
Any other thoughts on this section, practice examinations? No? Okay, so then that takes us to internet failure. If the internet failure occurs, the proctor will initially investigate the issue, and there's more detail. Are there any questions or changes? Okay. The next proposed for adoption is outside interruptions causing failure or disqualification. Okay. So we'll move on to hard copy proofreading. Any changes? All right, and the next line item is software. The only software that's permitted, the fact that it says real-time coach site, does that? Well,
Yeah. Chosen
okay.
vendor site.
I'm just
vendors.
I'm just putting a light on it so that when you go back to the details. Absolutely.
Again, Monique Black with DRA. NCRA also ran into the issues when you're talking about the only software being able to be ran is you're at the proctoring site via the internet and your CAT software. Some of us on Macs had an issue, and so we have to run a virtual machine. The first time I went to test, I was told I could not run it and was denied my test opportunity. So make sure that you have the capability. I'm sure that NCRA is giving you things, but I was immediately denied taking my test.
What did you have that they denied?
I run a virtual machine through my
For
Mac,
Windows.
so it looks like I'm
right,
running
right.
a
Okay.
program.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it definitely flustered me.
So we need map provisions.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, you know,
Thank
a
you.
lot of us think computer and think PC,
Mhm.
when
Right.
clearly there are people who use
There are
other
a
than-
lot of them.
I am.
Thank you for the comment. Okay, so then we can move down to trying to find our next proposed adoption. The seating arrangement of the speakers will be randomly assigned.
I'm sorry that the schools are gone for this one.
Yeah.
They have a reps meeting, and I feel compelled to share some of the comments from some of the teachers who expressed them to me individually.
Okay.
Their position is that with the stress of the test, it's one less thing that they should have to worry about, so that the seating chart should remain the same, so it's not something that becomes an issue for them. I hope I expressed that well on their behalf, but I wanted the board to be aware that that more than one school had that concern.
Any comments?
I appreciate that comment. I remember in our special meeting in December 7th, one of the comments that I made in response to one of the court reporting school owners who was down there in Orange County, because we had a lot of people in Orange County, if you recall, Yvonne. I said in my public comment during the meeting that I understood her comment, and I understood that it was board policy, and I understood the board policy had been violated in that instance. But I was very clear that it was my intent to make sure that we were given the discretion at a later time to change what I believe is a real life scenario.
Mhm.
And it's consistent with how the real world operates. And I was very clear at the time that that was this new amendment was something I was supporting.
Yeah.
My opinion only does not reflect the opinion of the board, but that's.
Yeah, and I would say that, it's what the students get used to. And, I hate to say this because I always feel like I'm turning into my grandmother. But this was not a policy when I took the test or any of my peers took the test. There was never a whisper of a problem in identifying speakers. when the tests were taken, because that wasn't the way it was run at the time. So we identify the speakers the way, and I don't remember how, but nobody had an issue with it. So it would just be now going back to you have your own system of how you're identifying, no matter where they're seated, which reflects the entry level real world. And that's why I supportive of having it randomly assigned versus it being the same way, test after test after test.
I'll echo the same comments. I mean, it gets back to the real world situation
Right.
and having to figure out how to deal with that and practicing that before the real world situation. So it sounds like that 5 is fine, and we can move forward to 6. Online exams will be video recorded, not audio only. Okay. Under transcripts, item number 4, candidates will have 2 hours and 30 minutes to complete and submit their final transcripts. No break will be allowed, including smoking or restroom breaks. That's a hard one for me.
Should we just change it back to 3 so we don't have to find a reg for that one?
That's not, but the problem is the software, right?
Oh,
No, the problem is the breaks, the 3 hours without a break.
Either you just hold it on and not have a break, or take 2.5 hours. I'm just saying.
About what some people did at the bar.
Yeah.
Court reporters don't get breaks anyway.
If folks
I'm
are
not
hap-
trying to be funny, I'm just saying to make it easier. If we have the 3-hour rule here, we don't have to deal with changing it in regs.
We have a lot of changes to make in
So might as well throw it in, okay.
What the board needs to do is decide what's right and what's fair, not what's easy.
Well, the denial, the change, if you will, of not permitting a break is rooted in the security breach issue,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that would seem like that is the primary concern. And how do you get rid of that? Like, how do you permit a break and overcome that security
You
issue?
can't.
You
So
can't.
either you sit there for 3 hours.
So it's
and
more
that's
the
life,
time. So
Or
do folks want to leave it at 2 hours and 30 minutes, or do they think it should be 3 hours equal to what happens on-site testing? And I see a finger up, yes.
Would it be helpful if the task force shared the reasoning, another reasoning behind shortening the transcription time? Because my understanding, it's just maybe not necessary to have that long for the
it
transcription.
seems like if you can't do it in 2.5 hours, you don't have it.
Sorry, what did you just say?
If you can't transcribe 12 minutes in 2.5 hours, you don't have it.
Yeah, I agree.
You've got drops, you're making stuff up and you're trying to remember.
Yeah, that 3 hours was set when we were bringing in our manual typewriters.
Yeah, so.
I do need to advise you that that would be a very, if the basis is because the board feels that the standard should be 2.5 hours and not 3 hours. Because, not because of exam security or biological needs, but because you believe that it's, should be done in that period of time. That is a significant change from the current standards and from the standards to which all current students are being taught. That is likely to hang up any regulatory process. You're gonna need really extensive documentation to justify a change.
Believe me, I
of
don't
that.
want to change it for that reason. I'm just trying to think out loud. Maybe I should shut up.
But the security issue is a big issue.
So that's what
And
I'm
I
saying.
don't see how we can,
I would just say 3 hours, and if you have to, you don't get to go to have a break. That's life. Either get it done or not, but I don't know. Or 2.5 hours. But that wouldn't be the reason. If that triggers that, then forget it. Because that would not be the reason. To change it is to change standard as far as can you type fast enough or write fast enough.
What I remember of the task force discussions, and this was one of the bigger discussions, the longer
Right.
discussions, was there was no way of overcoming somebody leaving the room and coming back in because you couldn't see
Absolutely.
what happened to them after they left the room. Therefore, being realistic, we're all people, we're all human beings, is 2.5 hours reasonable comfort-wise? If you're prepared for it, if you know that you're going to take this test right now, you're not gonna go have 6 cups of coffee before you go in for this 2.5 period. You have some things that you can control. Is that reasonable?
I think it's more than reasonable.
OPS was involved in these.
In our task force meetings, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
Okay.
I don't want to make it longer, I'm just saying.
No, I mean, this is our time and opportunity to talk
Yeah.
about these things. It's policy changes that will mean the difference for a lot of people, positive or negative. So this is a time to get your comments out because we will return back to them so everyone's aware of that.
Mhm.
And we'll also have more time to think about what this really means between now and the next meeting. And our counselor will look at the legal ramifications of things that we
As I recall from the task force meetings, they went as short as 2 hours to 2 minutes and 45 minutes. I mean, they discussed the full realm and what that would mean for the candidates and as
Mhm.
well for, was it reasonable?
2.5 sounds good.
Okay. All right, I don't hear anyone wanting to change the 2 hour and 30 minutes proposal, so that takes us to the provision of the steno notes. Online candidates will have 2 minutes to upload their notes. In the event of uploading an incorrect file, the candidate will have additional 2 minutes to upload the correct file. Are there any comments directly? Nope. Okay.
I have one question, because it pertains back to equipment needed. Is there some presumption that the notes are being taken in a format for PDF? I'm confused with regard to that. Usually that's a conversion format. And currently, unless you're taking notes in Word or one of the others, so I don't know if like the standard software that they would be using, any of this, like CAT software. CAT software has
Computer-aided transcription?
Right.
Mhm.
So you have a reference here to a specific branded piece of software. I'm trying to understand if that's actually something that needs to be part of the equipment needed as well.
No, I believe all CAT software create
Yeah,
PDF.
CAT software is
Okay.
the generic term.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody has some type of CAT software.
Okay.
There are different brands, different everything.
But
to your point, can you run a conversion from the CAT software?
From the notes to a
Right,
PDF.
without having to use some other.
Notes to PDF is interesting.
Yeah, it'll turn the steno notes into a PDF format. It'll still show
Yeah.
steno notes, which none of you would be able to read, but
We
it's
could
in
test.
PDF format, so that it could be emailed, printed.
transferred,
changed.
Yeah, nothing,
Is that
without
a separate
changing the
program,
steno
or
notes.
is
No,
that an
it's part of the
inherent
CAT
function?
It's a
software.
print feature, so it's
Okay.
just like right
Yeah.
now in Word, you can save to a PDF, you can print to a
Yeah.
PDF. It's standard part.
okay, if it's a standard part, then the CAT software is sufficient. All I'm trying to do is
Yeah.
make sure that we
Yeah.
don't have an oversight.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah.
So next we move on to failure to appear or cancellation. There any comments or changes or suggestions on what's been presented? Okay. Disqualification. Candidates will be automatically disqualified and the exam considered a failure for the following reasons. Any comments?
What page is that?
70. Middle page.
Oh, I tore it out because it was so interesting.
You tore it.
So I'll read what it says for you.
I have it. I just have it here.
Okay.
Silly question, did we define anywhere what the testing area is?
It's pretty much defined by what the proctor can see. So what they will do is have a webcam that will do a 360. And so if you're in a room that has lots of stuff behind you, they might have you drape a sheet over it so that it's easier for the proctor to see that there are no microphones or recording devices or anything behind you or to the side of you. So the testing area is just whatever location the candidate chooses to hook up their equipment and take the test. It's not really defined because it would potentially change for each person.
So in number 3, what if the testing area doesn't have a door, but they fully leave the frame? As worded, it doesn't give you the ability to be the proctor to disqualify you.
Well, you have to have a confined space. It doesn't have to have a door.
Where does it say that?
Number 3.
The door into the testing area. So.
Oh, right, no, the door into the testing area is open, but
Mhm.
where does it say that the testing area must be a confined
Well,
space?
it's not confined, that was my word.
Okay.
It's It has to be an area that the proctor can see. So there's a 360 on the camera. So it could be something as large as this room, as small as, you know, a closet. It could be in this room with a curtain around you all the way. It doesn't have to have a door, but there's a finite space.
So, just so that you understand, if we say the door to the testing area is opened, and it's not the door that opens, but a window that opens, that's not a fail. What you're trying to convey here is that there is a breach of the confined space in which the test taker is in by any other person.
So this will definitely be coming back.
Yes,
Wow.
that will be coming
We
back.
did not have any attorneys on our task force.
Okay. Okay. But it sounds, or at least no one has
We get an
said.
idea.
The concept.
Yeah, no one has said that they don't agree with the concept.
May I add one?
Yeah, what's your,
Number 5, earbuds in ears after dictation, computer speakers off. Immediate failure. Because all CAT software now has the ability to audio record while you're taking the test. And it'd be really easy to listen to anything you want to listen to. And then the person dictating would not have a clue.
Will the proctor be able to hear what's going on in the room?
That's what I'm saying. They can't turn that speaker
Yes.
off of their computer.
They do, it's a live connection. They can talk with each other. I'm not sure how they would do that, but I think it's a good idea. That's why they have headphones while they're taking the tests, so that other people can't hear it, but then they would be removed.
They have to or they're disqualified.
okay, so there's an addition. Any other thoughts? Yep, okay.
I'm gonna make one with regard to equipment needed, that it's not just an external webcam. An external webcam doesn't always have a microphone, so it needs to be an external webcam with equipment, equipped with a microphone.
Good idea.
Okay. All right. So that takes us to special accessibility. Are there any thoughts, changes? I know this is just to add a little thing, I know at the board, with the State Bar, they had examples of accommodations that would be possibilities. Is that something the task force talked about, or are there any thoughts on including that?
We did not talk about it only because the board just deals with what comes before them. It's like, in
It's
my
not often.
opinion, if you give ideas and somebody will say, hey, that sounds like a good idea, let me try that one. So we will absolutely deal with anybody that has a need.
Okay. Alrighty. With the accommodations, there's a special, let's see, medical verification. Okay. Perfect. Okay, that takes us down to identification verification. Candidates are required to submit 2 recent passport photographs with their examination application, and they will be required to show the proctor a valid photo ID.
This is what we do now, just so you know.
So it's proposed for adoption because it is
It's
something
the
we'd be
proctor.
doing to the
Yeah.
proctor, the proctor's involved. Okay. Proctor protocol. Proctors will require permission to access the candidate's computer. Video recording of the candidate's exam session is permissible and may be kept for up to 60 days following the candidate's exam session.
This is where I found out that our online vendor for the written tests records and keeps them for 60 days.
You didn't know that prior to?
I did not. OPS let me know that.
Is it enough time?
Do we know what the purpose of the 60 days is? Did
I think it's somewhat arbitrary, but it's to give time for a candidate who thinks that there's a reason to appeal and could appeal, and the board would be able to go back and say, yes, you're right, this did happen or did not happen. And that seemed a reason, they didn't want to keep them forever, obviously, but it seemed a reasonable time. I don't know how the arrangement with PSI came about as far as the specifically 60 days, but we wanted to make it consistent.
So your candidates do online exam from their own home for your?
Not from their own home.
They do it from the PSI contracted
Testing
site.
centers, yes.
But the videos they take are of the room.
Which video? At the PSI now, or?
Yes.
PSI has, I believe it's with the camera, they're in front of a monitor. I believe it's that.
Oh, really?
It's not the whole room. I don't know.
Okay.
I can double check.
Okay. Are there any comments or additions to that one? Okay, we'll move on to Tess.
May I?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry.
Just
I
for
didn't see.
no, that's okay. Just for consistency, since under disqualifications we use the words exam subversion, I would just say change test to exam to make it consistent. That's what we're referring to in the prior section.
Yes, thank you. Continuity is good. There we go. Okay.
I thought he did a search and replace.
It
asked me to
happens.
check that too, and I didn't catch it.
It happens. It's okay. We can fix it. So, exam subversion of any type is a misdemeanor. Candidates will sign affidavit agreeing not to save the file in any format or location, nor share the content in any manner. Are there any changes? Questions? Okay.
Can I make a comment on the grading policies?
Please.
As you move forward. So, we had like a mishmash of grading policies and punctuation policies. So I combined them into one document.
That's why I stole it. It's really
I
great.
know.
Oh, that's why you stole it.
I actually had it reviewed by the industry experts.
This is great.
And so, she standardized it, made it so it didn't look like it had been cut and pasted from several different documents, and kind of put it into a logical order, gave concrete examples of what the errors are. Has offered to expand it if there's anything that we feel she has missed, or we can take out anything that we feel is too much.
This would be swell on our website.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Swell. I
when
like
it's
that, swell.
finished, it will be.
No, it's really, really good.
Because the
I commend
grading
you
and the
for doing
punctuation
that.
errors are there now, so.
No, it's good. It's
the
super
updated
clear
ones
and
would be there.
It's a
concise.
swell idea.
Swell.
Okay, it sounds like it's a swell idea. So, thanks for doing that. We've gone through the entire online skills examination policy and procedures draft. Are there any other comments folks would like to make on the details? No? So, public comment would be appropriate now. Are there any public comments? No.
They're weary.
I know.
Sheila, there's your 4.
So,
We promised her 4 in the audience.
And they're there. Okay. Okay, so at this time, it would be a motion to accept the recommendations. I'm seeing a twisted face of the policy and procedures, and to have our EO and attorney go back and identify what things are policy versus regulatory, refine and add the things that we've said today to what's existing. It'll come back to us at another board meeting, and I guess you would say it's the final review on moving forward.
so can I ask for a little clarification? So you're looking for a motion to because we've made corrections here and suggestions and whatever. So what we're moving forward with is to direct staff, including legal, to come back to us with a complete document, which would also include whether items are policy or regulation. And I don't know why we're getting an echo. Is that what we're doing?
So it
I
would
just
be
wanna
my suggestion, since of all the things that we've heard today, that we need to figure out what will require a reg and what can just be changed as policy. We've heard additional thoughts on some of these
Right.
policies. So to have a final document that we all sound in on and say definitively, I think would be my suggestion, but
Okay,
I'm
so,
open to,
but that will be
suggestions.
staff. What we are asking is for staff, including
And-
legal,
Yeah.
to make the additions and corrections to what we've discussed. I'm just,
I would say the board would potentially be moving to approve as amended with a request for staff to work with legal counsel and bring back a final document for review.
I have some
The
language.
regulatory language.
The regulatory
The
language.
regulatory language.
so are we confident? Okay, so this is my thing. Are we confident that all the amendments and whatever have been reflected, or are we're asking for anything additionally besides the policy? Well, I want to make sure that we haven't left something out that staff will then need to come in and correct.
seems to me to be a living document. If you look at
Mhm.
all the changes of times adopted, so I think we'll get another shot of this if something got missed. Is that what I'm hearing? Your
Well, because I want to
concern?
make sure we're not hindering staff. So in our motion, I want to make sure that we are giving staff, if they note that something has been left out, that something could be included.
How does staff feel right now?
Well, go ahead.
Let's hear from staff.
I feel confident that between the task force language and the board going through it, that we have everything.
Okay.
But we will bring back the proposed regulatory language, so
Okay.
there will be one more shot.
Okay.
If there's anything glaring that we determine needs to be filled in, we can always highlight that in the proposed regulatory
Okay.
language for discussion by the board before the final vote to adopt.
Okay. I just want to make sure if I am making a motion that I have not confined something that would otherwise need some further. I want to make sure you can do your jobs.
I have
Right.
something I wrote out, maybe, if you want me to.
Go for
start.
it.
Can I just add something really quickly? Also, when the second meeting comes and say there's a policy, not something that requires a regulation, but it's a policy, we can also make suggestions to amend that at the second meeting, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so again,
This
it's,
is your document, this is the
My
board's
motion's super
document.
broad.
we can always take a look at it and always edit it.
Carrie wants to make a comment.
Point of clarification. So earlier today, we embarked on the licensing fee increase, which we were told is a regulatory process. And then secondarily, now we're going down another road where we have to go down a larger regulatory process. Are those going to happen at the same time? Because I do not want this larger process to delay the fee increase process.
So they would be two separate packages, although if there is a fee increase in this one,
Right.
it should be made part of, and I would suggest that that motion be that if there needs to be a fee, and you have all of the justification for it already, that we incorporate that into the other one.
Okay.
When you do your motion, that's part of the motion. Your EO will have to tell you whether or not it's gonna impact staff's ability to do it, but
Right.
they will be two separate regulatory packages. It's just better to do fee packages separate from everything else.
Yeah, I
get
just
that.
don't want our licensing fee regulatory process to be slowed down by the online process.
That's a valid concern.
Mhm.
It's a valid concern, and staff takes your point that the license fee takes precedence,
Mhm.
and that this would be of secondary priority.
Okay.
Okay, I
Do you want me to
think-
go for it?
Sure.
Okay.
Speak,
I'll-
speak slowly.
Yes. I will make a motion to accept the amended and recommended policies and procedures and have our executive officer and legal staff identify what is policy, what is regulatory, and report back to the board with final language for approval.
Ooh.
Semicolon.
Illustration is important.
When you're ready.
My dear board member Crom. Semicolon.
Semicolon. And a fee increase for online testing be incorporated with the licensing fee increase motion made prior.
And that's $50 from what?
It was 40,
40?
I think.
20, each individual one was 25, I went to 50.
Comma, $40 to $50.
No,
Oh,
no,
no.
no, no, no.
Okay, don't
I
do
went
that.
from
Never mind.
20 Don't put the specifics in. 'cause
No, we have to have the specifics or we can't put that.
25 to 50.
25.
It went from 25
Excuse me.
each individual segment
Okay.
to 50
Comma, $25
per
per segment to 50
segment.
per segment.
So somewhere in your motion, should it not say that this is about online testing?
To accept okay, ready?
Right.
A motion to accept amended and recommended policies and procedures of online testing,
Of the online testing task force?
of online testing task force, and have EO and attorney identify what is policy and what is regulatory. I mean, I know I'm going fast there because I already did it once.
I was questioning not your motion, but whether or not, because the recommendations included all of the dictation exam, whether on-site or online, they were being amended for both.
Yes.
So I don't know that we want to be specific about online. Maybe we can say
Okay.
related to the dictation exam.
Okay, related to the dictation exam.
Thank you.
All right, there is a motion.
I
Did
second
everyone-
it.
Okay. I believe it. Are there any public comments?
Oh,
No.
my goodness.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I want out.
No? Okay.
Oh.
Are you ready?
Let's do a roll call.
Ms. Crom?
Yes.
Ms. Lisinski?
Yes.
Ms. Nocella?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Hurt? Ms. Hurt?
I know, I'm taking a second.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just thought maybe I didn't hear you with the door opening.
I'm gonna say no.
Motion carries.
All right, that moves us to
What?
10, future meeting dates. Typically, we have our executive officer reach out to us independently, and then she'll see where we are.
I would basically like to know if anybody would like to declare for sure when they're going to be gone, or otherwise I can just wait, and when we poll, you can let me know.
Were you thinking of sometime in the fall? I mean,
Yeah, give us.
you have anything in mind?
I don't.
I mean, not a specific date, but more of a time, period of time?
I'm guessing the fall, but
Summer, okay.
So you're thinking like October, November?
At a guess.
Sorry?
I'm guessing. It's a guess.
And our next exam is in
speculating?
December.
I am speculating. This is total speculation. I know it will not be the first 2 weeks in September
Okay.
or the last week in August.
Because you're going where?
And it will be in Sacramento.
Mhm.
Most likely, but that's at the board's pleasure. We typically meet in Sacramento.
Okay, so I think we could do this offline.
Okay.
The details, it doesn't seem like there's anyone that says definitely I can't do start time period.
Well, I could, but why?
Okay.
But I think
Unless-
it's
I mean, if
easier
you
to
know
do it
some-
offline.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
just,
Okay, so that moves us to, actually, I had, someone asked me if we could return to legislation so that they could make a couple of comments, which is agenda item number 4.
I'm just going off some, excuse me, Brooke Bryan, president of CCRA. Thank you for this. I'm sorry I was late. I'm just going off of some notes that I was reading, and so I wanted to answer any questions that you had. So I'll start with AB 701, and that's the CART bill, what we're referring to as the CART bill. Yes, it's in the suspense file. It didn't make it out. It all because of money. It's all the money in the bill itself. We had CART for in the judicial branch. You know, that includes the Supreme Court. You know, we're thinking there's a number of people with hearing impairments. And all the district courts as well. So it was all the judicial branch, the universities, and there was a third one for the life of me. I can't remember right now, but you know, it entailed a lot of money. So it's in suspense. I can tell you that I believe that that's a very important bill to the legislature, and we'll get there. It's just not this year, and we got to find, you know, we'll find the money. But unfortunately, hearing loss is a substantial problem for our community, for our state, and so it's just going to get there, I think, naturally. Yeah, and then I think that maybe I had confused you, and I want to apologize. When I had talked about ADA last time, that was that CCRA was putting forth a recommendation to NCRA, the National Court Reporters Association, to have CART included under Medicare, and with the current administration, they've decided to not go forward with that. But that doesn't mean, no, they won't try again. CCRA will keep asking them to take that forward. And then I wanted to comment on AB 1285. That's Gibson. They removed all language reporting to related to electronic recording. So right now, the bill says to prohibit all videoing. So that's all it says now. So they removed all of the electronic recording components. And then AB 1450, we're very, 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 very close. Blessed. With Judicial Council and SEIU with exact language. It pertains to official court reporters and official pro tems. And then if there were any questions, I guess she wrote down that somebody wanted to know about appeals. If there's anything you want to know, Doreen Perkins is our chair of it, but I've been very, very involved, so I can help you with any of that. If you want to ask me now, if you want to ask me later, if you want to text me, it's fine. I can help you with that.
So I made a mistake earlier. So it's only officials, nothing to do with deposition reporters.
Official, this bill, 1450, says official court reporters and official pro tems.
Perfect, okay.
Okay, thanks. Is that it? Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll pass on, since you weren't here, that with AB 1285, the
Yes.
board voted to send an opposition.
Okay.
Letter in opposition.
Okay, perfect.
Is that the CCRA's stance?
No, 1285 was the ABC brought
Right.
forth that bill. Yeah, we opposed it, but they removed everything now related
So
to
it's not-
electronic
yeah.
recording.
so then we don't need to send.
A letter?
Well, that's your business.
Oh, well,
It's in your business.
So it takes out our opposition, right? I mean,
So you gave me the ability, if the
Okay.
bill
I like the
changes
word
substantially.
got it.
That's true.
Thank you.
I was getting there until it went off the rails
Thank
for a
you,
second.
And thank
Okay.
you all for your hard work on AB 1660. It's been a lot of fun, hard work.
Yes, thank you
We'll get
for
there.
being co-sponsors. Thank you. All right, so we are now at agenda item 11, which is public comment for items not on the agenda. Are there any comments? Welcome back.
Oh.
Hi, nice to see you all again. I do want to start the conversation. We were talking earlier about how to get more students into court reporting schools and the shortage. That's always talked about, the be it real or faux shortage. And there's a number of conversations we could have about that. But I do want to start talking about other remedies, other things we can start looking to, be it reciprocity with other states that have for voice. So that'd be Texas, Georgia, I believe, and Nevada, reciprocity. And then there'd be other steps, I guess, back in the day, before my time, but when there was a shortage before, we had provisional licensing. I think that we should have a very good, long conversation about steps to take place, but definitely probably start with reciprocity. So the sooner we talk about that, the better.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any further comments from the board on any items? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. We're adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good work, you guys.
I scan and.
How soon can we get Cesar?
Okay.